Hello and welcome to Superpower Broadcasting. I'm Kevin Castley. Thank you for being here tonight. Tonight's a bit more of a serious stream. I have a few things to say. We may possibly later be joined by my friend Jay of the War Kettle. It'd be great to speak with him again if he's able to make it. However, we have some stuff to go over, and I want to just thoroughly dispel with this narrative that you will see almost ubiquitously expressed online, which is this idea that war should be a last resort, that war as a means to solve a problem is always the last course of action that one should invoke. And here's a fundamental problem with that reasoning. I'm going to illustrate for you all tonight why it's bunk and junk, why it's incompatible with creating a just and prosperous and ultimately harmonious world. We can use the example of World War II. I've talked about this before on this show, but essentially, if we could go back in time, knowing how things unfolded, knowing the blunders of Neville Chamberlain, even though he meant well, knowing how many people died, 50 million plus in terms of the European conflict, right? We all, in the shoes of the British and French leaders and American leaders, would have taken out Hitler way before 1939. And you could say, well, people would die then. And it's like, yeah, but you know that tens of millions are going to die if you wait a few years. So is that really worth it? Is it really worth it to have peace in that sense? And I would contend, no, it's not. No, it's not. That it's not worth it. If you could buy a few years of peace and trade a couple million casualties for tens of millions, would you do that? A few hundred days, 700 days, 800 days of quote unquote peace? No, you wouldn't. Definitely wouldn't. So with that, we're going to basically get into the crux of the stream. Looked like there was a bit of a bandwidth issue of some sort. If everybody's able to see the stream, let me know. It's not really reporting viewer count accurately at the moment, which is unfortunate. Not sure what's going on with YouTube. Anyway, to get back to what I was saying, because you can, of course, watch this stream later on. When we're talking about matters of life and death, when we're talking about matters of war and peace in that sense, casualty count matters. The difference between 1 million dead, 3 million dead, or 50 million dead matters. The difference between 100,000 dead, 600,000 dead matters. If you're the one to initiate the conflict, 100,000 people die, people will turn to you and say, you were the leader, and all these people died like they did with Bush. Completely forgetting the fact that if you took no course of action to remove a threat, that potentially millions of people would have died down the road. And this, of course, is the response that George W. Bush received with respect to the Iraq War and Afghanistan wars. Oh, people died. People died in those wars. Yeah, no, of course they did. You know how many people died under Saddam Hussein? About 1.5 million. So, let's say nobody took him out and he just lived another 20 years. Way more people would have died just from him being in power than in the war to take him out, which killed about 200,000 people, most of whom were casualties of the Iranian-sponsored insurgency. They weren't casualties of the coalition forces. That was actually closer to around 20,000. And of course, that was almost all collateral damage, right? And so, I mean, it's a mess. It's a total mess. But yeah, we're really getting a weirdly depressed viewer count right now, and I'm not sure if that's just generally because people don't really seem to be too interested, or if something's going on YouTube's end. And given the fact that there's usually 10 to 12 people here right now, I think it's something going on YouTube's end, because I did see there was 8 people, and then immediately it dropped down to 2. So I don't know if they're screwing with me because I'm anti-Russian, and YouTube. I don't know. I mean, they do this kind of stuff to Reese all the time. I mean, it's like that meme, it ain't easy being Reezy, right? So anyway, moving on, getting back to serious matter at hand. Here's the deal. The title of this stream, of course, is "Give War a Chance." And why is that? Well, it's a reference to the phrase "give peace a chance." Now, give peace a chance. Oh, that sounds lovely, right? I mean, who doesn't want peace? Peace sounds awesome, right? You don't have to worry about death. You don't have to worry about destruction, plunder, all of the vices of war, right? That makes all the sense in the world. Here's the problem: we live in a world that is divided between the free and the enslaved, in which the leaders, the dictators of the enslaved bloc, seek global domination. Therefore, therefore, mind you, we cannot have peace. There can be no peace in a world which is divided between the free and the enslaved. There can only be peace once the world is as a whole liberated, once the world is westernized, once the world is forged into a federation of democracies. Then we can have an eternal peace, but we cannot have peace when our enemies are domestically terrorizing their people and on the international stage pointing nuclear weapons at us. It is a pipe dream. It is delusional. It is a fantasy. It is a mirage. And it is a mirage that if you fall for it and you're in a position of power, your neglect, your procrastination, your delusion will ensure the deaths of potentially millions, hundreds of millions of more people than would have died if we had taken care of things preemptively. And so this is one of the neocon pills, is that the idea that war should only ever be a last resort ensures that millions more will die. Whereas war is not necessarily a first resort, but once you figure out that the enemy is not seriously interested in negotiating in good faith, such as Iran and North Korea, and you say, well, we're done. We're done with this. You had your chance. We're taking you out now. That's the pill. Because right now, if a war with Iran happened, it's possible that several million people would die. But if we wait for them to get nukes and then they nuke Israel, I mean, more people would die in the first 20 minutes of that war than in the entire war if the West liberates them today when they don't have nukes, which would last years, right? More people would die in 20 minutes if we wait for them to get nukes and start a nuclear war with Israel and nuke U.S. bases in the region. This is what I'm talking about. The idea that there is a choice between peace and war is a false narrative. It's a narrative that has cost literally tens of millions of people's lives just in the last 100 years. I mean, because of course Neville Chamberlain and those of his ilk, they followed in that delusion. They genuinely believed, oh, we can buy peace with Hitler. We'll just give Hitler concessions. We will appease Hitler and let him take more territory and let him build up his military so that we can guarantee peace, because that way he's not going to invade us. That way it won't force us into war. And then what happens? They get forced into war because it reaches a breaking point. It reaches a point where you can no longer find it tenable, the enemy's encroachments upon your order. And because, of course, in the case of Germany, it started with Poland. But hypothetically, let's say that the British just waited another few years. Hitler would have invaded the UK, and then they're at war anyway, and many more millions of people would have died. And victory would be less guaranteed, right? Because that's another consequence of inaction, is that the longer you wait, the lower the probability that you win, the higher the probability that the enemy wins, because now the enemy is starting the war on their terms as opposed to you starting the war on your terms. The West is in a position of relative economic and military advantage right now. Iran and North Korea are in a position of relative weakness, economically and militarily speaking. What's the game plan? Are we seriously going to wait for them to reach parity? Because that's what we did with the Soviet Union, and it worked out so well. It works out so well, right? We let them get 40,000 nukes. 40,000 nukes. Imagine how big a number 4,000 is. And now it's 36,000 more than that they've got pointed at you. All your cities, all your schools, all your military bases, all your ports, all your airports. 40,000. 40,000. That was the consequence of peace. And you'd say, oh, they didn't use them. It's like, yeah, but let's say we run that simulation 20 times over. And how many of those universes did they use them? You really want to roll the dice? Because I know a lot of people want to roll the dice with North Korea and just hope that they don't use them preemptively. Really? No, I got news, dudes and dudettes who are watching right now. Here's the deal. I want to illustrate for you what peace looks like, because we are not in a world which is a federation of democracies. We're not in a world which is free. We're not in a world which is united in liberty. We're in a world which is divided between the free and the oppressed, and therefore there can be no peace. And any mirage of peace which you observe in this current configuration that we've had throughout human history is a mirage. At least the post-enlightenment of human history, when it made sense for there to be wars between powers, because there are democracies. There is a world that is divided between the free and the oppressed. If all the world were oppressed, there would be no sense for there to be war, because it would just simply be one dictator invading another dictator to promote his own prestige and get more resources for himself and his palace. Now, there were wars, of course, but the Treaty of Westphalia put an end largely to that in Europe. And yes, I'm against the Westphalian ideology in the present moment, but it made sense back then because there were no democracies. In other words, if everybody's living under a dictator, a king or whatever, then, at least we can make it slightly better by not having conflicts with each other. There's no liberation. If the King of France wins or the King of England wins, either way, there's a dictator. But once you bring America and a liberated France into the picture, and you bring in new countries that are free, now there's a case for war on interventionist grounds, on liberation grounds, right? So now the Westphalian model is no longer applicable, despite what our opponents, Kremlin Kyle, Kalinske, Neckbeard Jimmy Dore, Tuck the Cut Carlson, regardless of what all these people will say. And so I want to show you what peace looks like. This is what peace looked like in 1994 in Rwanda. We'll bring it up on the screen. So that of course, is a picture of the Rwandan genocide. The West did not intervene. The West chose peace instead of war. And look at what happened. Look at what happened. Doesn't that look so peaceful? Looks so peaceful, right? I mean, nothing says peace like a genocide, right? That could have been totally averted with military intervention. Nothing says peace. Oh, but Kevin, if the West intervened, there would have been a skirmish. Maybe a few hundred people would have died, in terms of forces fighting to prevent the genocide. People would have died, and then it would have looked bad for those leaders. Yeah, and you know how many people died because we didn't intervene? Around 1 million people, roughly. That's on that order of magnitude. Obviously, it's hard to get exact information, but it's about 1 million. 1 million people. 1 million people. That's what peace looks like in a world that is divided between the free and the oppressed. This is what peace looks like in Syria right now. Doesn't it look beautiful? Doesn't it look harmonious? This is what June of Shuon Head wants. She wants peace. She chose peace. This is what Tucker Carlson wants. He chose peace. He's against the wars. He wants to end the wars. This is what, of course, Abby Martin wants. This is what Noam Chomsky wants. They want peace. They want peace. They don't want wars. Neocons want wars. They want peace. This is peace. Does it look so peaceful? I mean, look at that. Look at that. That's peace right there. Does it look great? Wouldn't you love to live there? Wouldn't you love to wake up and that be your neighborhood? Wouldn't you love that to be your childhood? That's peace right there, my friends. That's peace. Well, why not peace? Give peace a chance. Give peace a chance. End the wars. Hashtag no intervention in Syria. Hashtag, peace now. Hashtag code pink. End the wars. End the wars. 600,000 people dead since 2011. So that one man could hold on to power and his wealth. A billionaire. You want to talk about wealth inequality? Look at Syria. 8 million people or so had to flee that country. Flood mostly Europe. This, again, this is not from a left-wing or a right-wing perspective. I know that there are a lot of right-wingers out there that have a problem with what they see as the refugee crisis, the mass importation, as they would term it, or allowance of, as they would say, hordes of refugees coming into their countries. Yeah, I think it's a problem too. I understand. I understand why people are uncomfortable with that. You know who they blame for that? They blame the neoconservatives. They blame the war hawks. Really? Neocons wanted to do nothing about Assad and let this happen. Really? Amazing. Now, I got news, dudes. If John McCain had won in 2008, the presidential election against Barack Obama, you know what would have happened? He would have bombed the crap out of Assad. You'd say, "Oh, that's war. That's war. Why not peace, bro? Why not peace? We're bad. We're bad. Okay. We're bad. Okay." Yeah, and you know how many people probably would have died in that conflict? Probably about, 50,000 or so, maybe 100,000 tops. And yeah, all the SJWs, all the alt-right, all the paleocons, all the social democrats, all the progressives, they all would have, crapped on McCain and said, "Look, you started this dumb war. You got 100,000 people killed for what? For what? That all those people that you got blood on your hands, man." Well, guess what? Obama chose peace instead. He chose peace instead. He had the power to intervene. He had the power. It's not like he was Costa Rica. It's not like he was Luxembourg. He could have intervened. He was the leader of the strongest superpower in human history. He could have intervened. He had all the potential to do so. You know, it's like Arnold Schwarzenegger watching a couple, 5-year-olds fighting or whatever. It's like he could break up the fight if he wanted to. He's got the strength, but in this case, he chooses not to. Well, you're culpable if you have the potential to intervene and you don't. You're culpable, right? So that's what peace looks like. Obama chose peace, and we've had 9 years of peace in Syria right now, right? No intervention, nothing. The West didn't intervene. How many people are dead? Oh, that's right, about 500,000 more already than would have been dead if we had just taken this guy out right at the start. Oh, but 100,000 people dead. That's such a horrible thing. What leader would want that on their conscience? Yeah, but Obama has 600,000 dead people on his conscience. So, I mean, you want to talk about the refugee crisis? Like, I got news. Here's the problem. I can, in many ways, understand where the far right and a lot of the paleocons are coming, in the sense that they are uncomfortable with millions of people coming into their countries in Europe. I understand that. I'm making the point that regardless of what side you're on this, you should support intervention in Syria because it would have prevented that refugee crisis. They would have been able to stay in their own country, free, and rebuild it anew as a democracy, and not have to flee to Europe. Because yes, there are conspiracy theories. There are those out there who would say, oh, they just want to come and take the welfare or whatever. They just want to leech off of your European productivity. And it's like, no, Syria is a pretty educated population. Nobody wants to get up and have to leave their town to go and live somewhere thousands of miles away and have to risk their lives to do it. Some of them drowning in the Mediterranean Sea, some of them, having to stay in cramped refugee camps and getting illnesses for months or years, some of them dying en route. Really? That, like, the way that you would hear it described if you only consumed paleocon or far right media was as if it was just like a luxury jet plane over to Europe. That's not the case. Those people did not want to go there. They had to, because this was what they were leaving. They were leaving the peace that the West gave them. Yeah, so this is what peace looks like, my friends. And you could say, well, you're making appeals to emotions right now, Kevin. You're making appeals to human empathy right now, which, yes, in that sense, I'm doing. But let's say that you're somebody out there who just none of this resonates with you. You don't care. You're like, I only care about my country. I only care about my people. I don't care. You're like, okay, well, I got news. I got pill for you. I got a pill. I got a pill. This is also what peace looks like. The West chose peace in North Korea. Those missiles right there, those missiles can reach Washington, D.C. Those missiles can reach San Francisco. Those missiles can reach Toronto. They can reach London. In fact, they can reach almost every part of the world except for Uruguay and some surrounding regions to Uruguay. They have a range upwards of 18,000 kilometers, and they've been tested, and they can do it. They've put them on very highly lofted trajectories, straight up into space. Watch them come down, in the water, so it doesn't like hurt anybody or whatever, just so that they can gauge the telemetry of it. And you're like, well, if they put it on an optimal trajectory, it would have gone way past Washington, D.C. This is a country that nobody took seriously. Now they could put a nuclear warhead on Washington, D.C. in 30 minutes. Oh, it was so peaceful, man. It's so peaceful. Nobody wanted to do war with North Korea. It's peace. It's peace. Look at that. That's peace right there. They're building up nukes every day. Every couple weeks, they introduce, a new crop of nuclear weapons into their arsenal, so that they can point at us in the United States and Canada in the United Kingdom and so on and so forth. Does that make you feel comfortable? Does that make you feel peaceful? Really? I mean, you're just walking around and you know that there's one of these targeted on a city near you or in your city. Oh, it's so peaceful, man. This is what I'm talking about. It's a false peace. It is absolutely a false peace. It is not peace when there is a sword of Damocles held above your hand by a communist who despises your way of life and seeks to destroy it. That is not peace. This idea of mutual assured destruction, that's not peace. It is a necessary compromise and coming to terms with a force that is too powerful for you to take action against. North Korea was not always like that. There was a time when North Korea had 0 nukes. And you know what happened? Bill Clinton and Madeleine Albright, they chose peace with North Korea. And look at what we got today. The gulags continue. The starvation continues. The purges continue. The executions continue. And so on and so forth. But what's new? Oh, there's new fun. Now they can nuke us if they want to. Oh, doesn't that sound great? Why not peace? Let's give peace a chance. So to close out that introductory speech of mine here, what do you all think? What do you all think? I mean, I haven't been watching the chat. I've just been speaking here right now. We had some issues in terms of YouTube presenting the metrics to me. I'm not sure. I do know that some people have said that they were not receiving notifications from YouTube, which I guess makes sense. I mean, I know that a lot of channels have that. A lot of channels have that happen to them. Even tame channels that don't really get political have that happen to them, of course. But I don't think the folks at YouTube, I don't think the elites that run YouTube, I don't think they really like my message very much. I don't really think they like the message that we should not be trading with communist China. YouTube courts the communists in China, just like Zuckerberg. You know, Zuckerberg loves to cuck to she. It's pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. And yeah, we're in an uphill battle right now, my friends. And you know, when I uploaded this stream earlier, or at least when I scheduled it rather and put it public with that title, I lost about 4 or 5 subscribers. And you might think, oh, for a small channel, it's like that's noticeable. It's like, no, I don't care. I see it as a win in many ways, because those were 5 people who didn't realize that I was a hawk. It's like you're subscribed to Superpower Broadcasting, the home of the Hawks, and then you see a stream go up that says give war a chance, and then you unsubscribe. Really? What did you think this channel was about? Did you think that we were like for Tulsi Gabbard or something? Did you think that we were like with Anna Kasparian or something? Did you think this was the Young Turks? Like, I'm glad those people are gone. I gotta keep it real with you, dudes. Like, I'm glad they're gone. I'm absolutely glad they're gone. You know, the patrons are still here. Big up to the patrons. Didn't lose any patrons because the patrons are hawk pilled. Like, the patrons get it. That's the thing. The subscribers come and go, but those who are supporting the channel financially right now, they're pilled. They're cold and bold. They're based and pilled. They understand this shit. Absolutely 100%. 100%. So we're going to get into some of the comments from the chat. Perhaps Jay might be joining us a little bit later, but I'm not sure how long I'm going to stream tonight, of course. I've got to be up early for work tomorrow. I did send the invite out to Reese, as I usually do. Reese is a busy guy. I know a lot of people have been asking. They're like, well, when is Reese going to come on? You got to get Reese on again. And it's like, here's the deal. Reese is a busy dude. He's recently been promoted. He is no longer the Prince of Warmongers. He's the God King of Warmongers right now. He is a busy guy. He's a busy guy. We talk, of course, but he's a busy guy. And the thing is, we are all grateful for him when he does show up, because he has been fighting the good fight for a long time when we didn't have so much of a vibrant hawk community on YouTube, getting crap from the isolationists left and right, literally ad nauseum, by himself, and he stood his ground. And you know, if he does, I've said it before, if he never makes another video again on YouTube, if he never uploads anything else to YouTube ever again, he will have left a bigger impact on this platform than Kremlin Kyle could ever hope to accomplish with his little brainlets than Shoe on Head could ever hope to accomplish with their little brainlets. They choose peace. They're good people. They're not evil villains like us. They're heroes. They're so virtuous. They choose peace. They choose this. They choose this. Look, they choose peace, dudes. They choose peace. They choose peace. Look at that. That's what they choose. They make videos. They oppose intervention in Syria. They, of course, if they were alive at the time, they would have imposed intervention in Rwanda. They and this is the pill. I want to make it very clear to you, my friends. Guaranteed 100%. Don't listen to their BS. If they were alive and had YouTube channels back in the 1940s, they would have said, why not peace with Hitler? They literally would have done the America First memes and said, well, actually, Hitler isn't a threat to us. He's only a problem in Europe, and that's not our problem. Or, Hitler, he's trying to build socialism and progressivism in Germany, right? He just wants the workers to have rights, okay? Like, that's probably what Kyle would have gone in. Now, sure, if you ask them today, they'll say, no, World War II, that was a just war. It was a just war, of course. No war since has been just, but World War II, that was just. And so why do they say that? Well, one, because there's a lot of stigma around World War II. Like, if you come out and say we shouldn't have done anything, people are going to be like, what, are you a Nazi, bro? And so it raises red flags, and even the isolationists have to admit it, that, yeah, that's going to make us look bad optically, so they have to pretend like they would have supported intervention. But some of them I think are more genuine. Some of them I think understand, like, they learned about the Holocaust. A lot of them are clueless on the world, but at least they know what the Holocaust was, and it probably makes them uncomfortable, and they think, well, that was so huge, I would have done something. But here's the deal. The West didn't know about the Holocaust when the West intervened against Hitler. That came out after it was already done. I mean, the reasons for going in against Hitler for the United Kingdom and France were that Hitler had invaded Poland in 1939. And of course, Hitler later declared war on the United States. And so that was the pretext in which the United States entered the war. It had nothing to do with the Holocaust. This whole idea, I would have supported taking out Hitler. No, they wouldn't. Bullshit. Kyle would be making videos today citing Hitler State TV, Hitler State Radio as his sole source in his videos, just like he does today with Venezuelan State TV. And you can go and watch Reese's video on that, where literally he exposes Kyle, that Kyle's sole source was a Twitter account that was affiliated with Venezuelan State TV to try to slander the United States of America, to make the slanderous allegation that the United States was blockading Venezuela from receiving food aid. Absolute bullshit. And he parodied it. You don't think he would have parroted, the Reich's state glorious propaganda or whatever? Oh, absolutely. There's no way in hell. There's no way in hell Kyle Kulinski, Jimmy Dore, Abby Martin, Tucker Carlson, Noam Chomsky, any of these people would have supported war against Hitler. They wouldn't have if they were alive back then. The only reason why they'll say so today is because it makes their arguments look better, because people think they're more reasonable, because they're like, oh, well, they're not 100% against war. They understand that war is necessarily sometimes, because they said, Hitler was right to go to war against him. No, it makes their arguments look more reasonable if they say, well, there was one war I supported, even though they wouldn't have. And it also... It goes to this appeal to humanitarianism, because we all know how horrible the Holocaust was. Nobody knew about the Holocaust back then. It's just absolute bullshit. This is the other thing that's so stupid, is that we know what's going on in Syria today. We have reporters on the ground. We have television now. We have the internet now. We have all these things that, yes, they had like TV and stuff back in like the 40s, but you know what I mean? We have independent television now. We can actually see stuff on the ground. We can see hard-hitting journalism. We can see the reality. We can have access to images like this before the intervention. You would have only gotten images like this after the war was basically over in World War II. So we know what's going on there. We know that Bashar the Butcher is literally slaughtering the country, setting the country on fire to hold on to his swag palace and his billions of dollars and his titles, right? The palace on the hill, right, overlooking the denizens of this hell state. We understand exactly what's going on there. We have access to that information now. We have so much more access to information about what's going on the ground than any of the leaders did that decided to go and intervene against Hitler. And you know what, Kyle? And you know what all these people say? They look at that and they say, let's not do anything. Let's choose peace. So they can see what's happening and they choose peace. So if we're in 1941 and nobody really sees much of outside of Nazi Germany, outside of their propaganda and stuff, they're going to choose peace with Hitler. They're going to be walking around with signs. They're going to be making YouTube videos, if YouTube were a thing back then, saying like, let's have peace with Hitler. Like, he's our friend. Well, why not get along with him? They do this shit with Putin right now. No, dude. I'm telling you, man, these people, they are depraved. It is depravity at their core. I mean, you want, like, degeneracy is a real thing, right? These people do not have empathy. And it's not even a simple matter of empathy. I talked about with the North Korea example there. I talked about with this. This here, that's no appeal to humanitarianism. That argument right there is solely about our national security. That's about our survival as a country, as a civilization. It is horrible what's happened in North Korean gulags. I understand that. Absolutely. I've been studying that for a long time, in my personal life and everything. That was one of the things that kind of really crystallized my hawkish views, was reading about North Korea when I was like 11 and 12 and so on and so forth. Because I mean, ever since I watched 9/11 happen when I was 7 years old, I was a kid, young kid. But I knew it in my heart. I was a hawk, basically. I couldn't express it in those terms, but I was pissed at the terrorists, right? I supported Bush. I didn't know too much about politics, but I knew I hated the terrorists, right? I mean, this argument right here, this has nothing to do with the people in the gulags, because even if you're not able to liberate them, even if they die in the conflict, that's irrelevant now, because North Korea has gone from being a humanitarian crisis, first and foremost, to being a existential threat right now. In other words, the priority there is no longer on liberating the people. It sucks to say it, but hey, we waited. We chose peace, right? It's too late to save a lot of them. A lot of them are going to die. I mean, the North Koreans, anyway, as it is, they have orders for their guards. If you don't know this, not very many people do know this, but that if war ever broke out, they have protocols to execute all the prisoners in the gulags the second the West goes to war against North Korea. So there isn't really liberating them anyway, even if they didn't have nukes. No, the argument for intervention against North Korea right now is solely so that we don't get nuked. In other words, nuke them before they nuke us. That's the nuke pill. That's what this comes down to. That's the hawk pill. I mean, I wish it were a matter of humanitarian intervention. I wish they didn't have the nukes. I wish that, you could just conduct a campaign there, have a few 100,000 people die, liberate the regime, but ultimately save far more people in the long run. No, they have over 200 nukes right now. And it's not just that they have over 200 nukes. Those Topol systems, they're at least analogous to a Topol system. And they were largely a result of Russian ingenuity anyway, because they contract out Russian scientists to help them, right? By the way, sanction Russia 100%, way more than we're doing. But additionally, those nukes, as I said, can reach Washington. They can reach Miami. They can reach every U.S. ally. I mean, this is no longer about saving people from gulags. This is about saving ourselves at this point. This is nuke them before they nuke us, right? That's the level that we're at right now, because we chose peace. We let it get that bad. Are we really going to let them build up 40,000 nukes like we did with the Soviet Union? Because that's what they're doing. Like, they're just going to keep building them up. Like, what do you think was going to happen? You think that Kim's going to reach a number and say, we're done. We're done. Like, you think he's going to just stop at 200 and say, yeah, we have enough to guarantee deterrence. We're not going to build up anymore. No, because he wants a second strike capability and a third strike capability. He wants to be able to level America 18 times over, not once, right? Really? We're going to let this happen? That's peaceful. You feel comfortable walking around knowing that a North Korean missile could be dropped on your city? I mean, they don't have an H-bomb yet, as far as we know. At least they haven't tested one. But they're only a few years out. And once they do, I mean, they're going to mass produce those too. So we're like a few years out from them being able to put a hydrogen bomb on Washington, D.C., and then put another one and another one and another one just for good measure in case a couple of them get shot down. so they can still guarantee that the American capital gets wiped off the map. Really, that's peaceful. That makes you feel good inside. Oh, we chose peace. End the wars. Hashtag end the wars. Amazing, man. Amazing. That is a false peace. That's a false peace. And you could say, well, North Korea is a mess. I understand that. I'm just saying it would have been a lot more clean if they didn't have the nukes. They didn't have the nukes. So they didn't have a nuke. So what else is there here? We're going to take a look at the chat. Dr. Zaust here says, I thought this channel was a TYT affiliate. WTF, unsubscribe. Yeah, like I'm just wondering what's up with like those 4 or 5 people that saw that I put a hawkish title. And by the way, it's obviously it's a play on words, like it's a reference to give peace a chance. Because I wanted to highlight here tonight what that actually looks like. That sees millions, or at least 1 million Rwandans dead instead of a few hundred. That sees the North Koreans arm ICBMs against us instead of simple artillery pieces against the South like they had before 2006. That sees Syria have 600,000 dead and 8 million have to flee the country instead of 100,000 dead and not really much of a refugee crisis. See, that's what peace yields. And so the pill here is that war is not like there is no choice between war and peace. The choice is between horrible war later or less horrible war now. And in that context, preemptive war is actually saving lives. That's the point there. Let's see what else Dr. Zaus has to say. By the way, again, just a shout out to Zaus. Big up Zaus. He did pay his tithe. He sent me that contribution over to my PayPal, and I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. I got a lot of haters, dude. I have a lot of haters. Like they make videos about me and everything. They call me nasty names. Actually, some of them their names are pretty weak. Some of them just basically call me lame and stuff. But I get flooded with them, and they're not all just total radicals. A lot of them are like what people would think of as like reasonable, moderate neoliberals. No, they hate me too, man. Got a lot of haters out there. A lot of haters. We got a lot of haters and traitors. So it's good to have the hot gang out here, and it's good to know that I got support. I appreciate it, man. Absolutely. Absolutely. So big up Zealous. Nah, dude, Bolton's cold and bold. I'm a Bolton super fan. Absolutely. Bolton's a personal hero of mine. No doubt. No doubt. Wish we had more people like Bolton in the West. Absolutely fearless. He doesn't care what anybody thinks of him. Like that's the thing. That's the pill with Bolton. You're never gonna like change his mind by like calling him names like a neocon Google or say like, oh, people are they think you're dangerous, man. People find your rhetoric uncomfortable. It triggers them. Maybe you could tone it down a little bit. You know what Bolton says? Bolton's like, dude, there are people dying in concentration camps around the world. There are enemies arming nukes against us. I don't care about your feels, dude. Oh man, Bolton. Oh, dude, I wish he was president. Oh man, Bolton would be. I mean, can you imagine a Bolton Cheney presidency? Like, I think I tweeted that out a little while ago. I was like, Bolton Cheney 2024. Can you imagine? Or Cheney Bolton could go either way. I mean, Chad Cheney, honestly, one of the best vice presidents America's ever had. It's not even really that close. Chad Cheney was Chad. So imagine President Cheney. It'd be Chad. Let's see. What else do we have here? Let's see. Alan Ray's ass. As a neocon, how do you separate yourself from Republicans that are like the dumbasses in the 2013 Texas Board of Education that wanted to teach in public schools that Africa was populated by Noah's son Ham? Well, that's more like the paleo conservative side of things. The neocon side is more reflective of foreign policy in general, as well as an economic stance that leads towards liberal capitalism. And there's also the persuasion that's informed by having a background on the left and realizing the depravity of the far left and therefore moving forward with conviction towards a center right, a moderate right wing perspective that views the United States in particular as the vanguard of the liberal order, right, in the world, and humanitarianism and the promotion of democracy and capitalism. So there are paleocons that supported that kind of stuff, and there were neocons that would have being associated with that. It really it's more of a party thing in that sense than anything else. And at the end of the day, I'm telling you, man, I'll take that any day over letting North Korea arm nukes against us. Like, bigger fish to fry. Like, we can deal with like small stuff like that, like those kinds of social issues and stuff, after the world is liberated. Because at the moment right now, that party, the Republican Party, minus Trump. Trump's different. This is new. But like up until very recently, the Republican Party was the only party that really understood foreign policy. You could say now, Kevin, well, Kevin, the Democrats want to get tough on Russia now. Bullshit. That's just orange man bad. I guarantee you, dudes, that if Mitt Romney were president of the United States right now, if he won in 2012 and he was like getting tough on Russia and calling Putin bad names and stuff and saying, I ain't going to sit down with Putin. Rachel Maddow, all these people on the mainstream media would be saying that he's like a warmonger, that he could start World War III. We need to get along with Russia. Why not peace? Whereas now Donald Trump's weak on Russia, so they're like, he's weak. We need to be strong on Russia. No, dude, they're so partisan. The Democrats, the second they have power, they're going to be doves again. They're going to be pigeons again, because the Democratic Party at their core is a party that's feeble and pigeon-like. John Bolton, or I shouldn't say John Bolton, but Joe Biden is somebody who used to be pretty much like an open liberal hawk, and he's had to really tone down his rhetoric in recent years, of course, to appease the progressive side of things. I worry that the Obama side of Biden would come out as opposed to the hawk side of Biden. Biden's a much older Democrat, but the Democratic Party is of the last 20 years or so, 20 to 30 years, has really been feeble and timid and hesitant to have any bit of a proactive stance on foreign policy. The Republicans have been the opposite. And now, of course, things have switched a little bit, but I'm arguing here the only reason why they switched was because the Democrats are just trying to spite Trump. And then after the orange man's out, they're going to go back to their natural resting state, which is let's just trade with Iran. Let's lift the sanctions, bro. Let's trade. Let's do neoliberal reforms. If we give them money, maybe they'll let their people have freedom. Oh man, it's pathetic. It's pathetic. Like, I wish that there were Democratic hawks. And I wish that there were more Republican hawks. Like, I wish it was the case that, like, no matter which party gets into power, they understand international relations. Same in Canada, same in the UK, same in France, right? I wish that it wasn't a partisan thing. I wish that, like, whether you voted for like a social democrat or like a conservative or a centrist, no matter who, they're going to be tough on Iran. They're going to be tough on North Korea. They're going to take the threat seriously, right? We don't live in that world, and it sucks. But in the world that we do live in, I'll take like some Republicans supporting like creationism and believing in creationism, but if they want to actually get serious on North Korea, over like Obama, where he just lets North Korea build up nukes, calls it, quote, strategic patience, end quote, or as I call it, strategic procrastination, right? But I guess he's more secular. It's like, okay, but like, we're not going to have a civilization to secularize if we let our enemies keep building up these nukes to arm against us. That's like kind of the point. It's like, it's existential. These other issues are more higher stage issues in terms of the hierarchy of addressing them. We have some basic issues that need to be addressed right now if our civilization is going to continue into the 21st and 22nd and 23rd centuries. That's more important than like this kind of stuff, like the culture wars or whatever. So I lean more socially liberal myself, and I support secularism. But as I said, foreign policy is the issue of our generation. So that's the main issue. So what else is there going on here? Yeah, just gonna read through the chat. Dirty Dancer says it's goofy as hell to say the Dems are more likely to base their policy decisions on hanging the leader after the Obama era. Oh, yeah, there was a lot of Obama derangement syndrome, but it didn't really affect foreign policy too much. Like the Republicans had a proven track record of having a strong foreign policy before Obama and during Obama. Whereas the Democrats, on the other hand, this is new for them to be kind of hawkish on stuff like North Korea or Russia. Not even hawkish, but just recognize them as a threat, right? And that's because Trump is kissing their asses. And so I'm making the point that it's largely a function of Orange Man Bad and like the NPC sort of meme of like the mainstream media than it is a genuine evolution towards being more pilled on foreign policy. I don't trust them. That's my reading of it, at least. We can disagree on our readings, of course. So let's see. Yeah, Nicholas makes another point here. He says, I by and large identify with the Dems, but they seem to have IDS, which he calls Iraq derangement syndrome. And that's another thing is that George W. Bush really lives rent free in the heads of the progressives in particular. I mean, they're still Kyle's living in 2003. Like they never grew up. They never got out of it. They don't understand. Like they think that like the establishment or whatever is like this super hypey neocon sort of thing, and it's like they don't understand that like times have changed. The establishment now wants to like make a quick buck and trade with these dictators and stuff. They don't want to go to war anymore. Like, I mean, look at Obama. He literally had strategic patience. Yeah, and Alan Ray says strategic patience, Jesus Christ. Yeah, imagine that. Like, because we can talk about presidential doctrines, right? You get your doctrine. Sometimes your doctrine is called, after your name, like the Bush doctrine, that kind of stuff. But, Bush also had shock and awe. Think about, Harry Truman. Harry Truman was a based president. I don't agree with him on everything. I wouldn't have fired Douglas MacArthur. I think that was a stupid move on his part. It was more or less kind of like a virtue signaling kind of move. I didn't like that. I thought Douglas MacArthur, he should have been given more free reign to win the Korean War. He would have saved a lot of American and coalition lives if he had been able to use nuclear weapons against the Chinese and the Soviet air bases in the region. But as they send a horde of 1.5 million troops in to butcher the Americans and Canadians and everybody else that was in there. And Truman, of course, fired Douglas MacArthur when he suggested basically salting the Yellow River, just irradiating it so they couldn't cross over for several decades. That would have seen far fewer casualties. Not to mention that was at a time of conscription. And I haven't really gone into this. I'll have to do a video at some point before. I've talked about this with respect to Israel, but like, if you know that your soldiers have volunteered for something and like they're a professional force, you can be more surgical and precise and say, okay, we're going to take into account like trying to capture the enemy alive and try to do this delicately. But if the guys there are like conscripts and they're drafted into it, you have every duty to save their lives and minimize their casualties. And so in that context, if you're leading a conscript army as Truman was, then yeah, 10 million Chinese deaths is preferable to losing 10,000 American deaths, right? Like, because they're not a professional force. They're there, they were conscripted. You have to do everything in your power to save American lives. That's your job. So if a million communist lives are lost, okay, it's like too bad, so sad at that point. You're tasked with protecting the lives of your own, right? If it's a conscript force, it's the same with Israel. Like, I understand why Israel does strategic moves, not strategic, but I should say surgical moves, where they'll actually send in IDF troops to like sweep through neighborhoods because they don't want very many civilian casualties. I get it. I get it. You know, but let's keep it real. That's a conscript force. If it's a conscript force, you can't be that careful with civilians because it's like you have to protect your own first and foremost, right? Like if the civilians don't want to die in collateral damage, they can rise up and get rid of Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, right? Like you have to look after your own first if it's a conscript army. That's my view on that. I think it really does depend a lot on if the people that are carrying out the thing signed up for it or not, right? You know, like if everybody there signed up and they understand what they're getting into and everything, then you say, okay, maybe you don't use the nukes or whatever, but they're conscripts. You have to take their safety into account, like seriously. So Douglas MacArthur, he suggested using 60 nuclear weapons against the Chinese forces in Manchuria. Well, that was pretty reasonable. America could have done it. It would have ended the Korean War very quickly. North Korea never would have been a thing past like 1950. Instead, Truman fired him. Anyway, that's obviously a bit of a rant there, a little bit of a tangent. But let's see. Yeah, so as I was talking about strategic doctrines and stuff, so obviously Truman had the doctrine of containment. Like that was his doctrine. The Truman doctrine was you're going to contain communism wherever it spreads, right? Going to contain communism, and that's a cool doctrine to have like your name attached to. You're like containment. Everybody thinks of that with Truman. That was cool. Obviously Reagan had a number of he had the Strategic Defense Initiative. He had a lot of these things that were attached to his name. What did Obama have attached to his name? His doctrine was called strategic patience. That's what he termed it. Like what? That's embarrassing. Like, because strategic patience, another word for patience in foreign policy is procrastination. Like that's like Neville Chamberlain level cringe, man. Amazing. Let's see. Progressive apostate asks, how would you respond to people who call George W. Bush and Obama, quote, war criminals, end quote, over Abu Ghraib and the drone strikes, etc.? Well, those people are brainlets. War criminal. Like everybody's a war criminal, basically. That's oh man. I mean, where do you even start with that? Saddam Hussein was the war criminal. Saddam Hussein did war crimes ad nauseum. He gassed his own people. George W. Bush vanquished a war criminal. And then as far as Obama, the drone strikes, yeah, he kills terrorists. It's like, okay, that's a war crime. Like whose side are these people on? Are they with us or the terrorists? Let's see. Dirty Dancer says Kevin acts like Dems are college hippies when most have been hawkish. Yeah, a lot of Dems were hawkish in the 1990s. Like, show me a list of hawkish Dems today. Like, I like Biden. Obviously, Biden's way better than Trump and obviously better than Bernie. Like, no question. And he was based in the 90s and stuff. But like, he's like apologized and stuff for supporting the Iraq War. I want to see a list of hawkish Dems today, because there were a lot in the 90s and the 80s and stuff for sure. But yeah. And even in that case, the point that I guess is kind of getting missed is that the Republicans were still a lot more hawkish and a lot more pilled on foreign policy. Nicholas says there are definitely dumb hawks. I mean, Hillary Clinton is a good example, right? She's a base liberal hawk. I really like Hillary Clinton, but he says there are definitely dumb hawks, but when they're not at the helm, their foreign policy kind of stinks. Well, see, that's the problem. I think post-Trump, their foreign policy would get worse than under Trump, because Trump, his foreign policy is stunk. So they have to contrast themselves. So they kind of act hawkish and tough on Russia and stuff. I believe that when they get into power, they're going to be meek and weak and not actually do anything, because Obama was pretty meek and weak. Now Joe Biden's a little bit different. It really depends who Joe Biden appoints. Like, I'd love to see him put like Mitt Romney in like a high position in the cabinet. That'd be based, but I don't think he's going to do it. I think it's all going to be Democrats, but we'll see. We have a comment on Twitch by Star Trek. He asks, or states rather, would have been more than several decades, referring to assaulting the Yalu. No, it would have been about 40 to 60 years, roughly, depending, given the warheads that they would have used and stuff, and the radiation and everything. Again, it goes back to what I was saying before. It meant that the Red Army wouldn't have been able to cross it. The Communist Chinese Red Guard wouldn't have been able to cross it. You've got conscripts there that are carrying out a police action to end the communist invasion of the South. They were conscripted into it. You're assigned to protect their lives first and foremost, as well as the lives of the South. Like, okay, I'll take salting the Yalu over having like a million plus, like 3 million people died in that conflict, man, because Douglas MacArthur wasn't given permission to use the nukes. Like, unacceptable. That's the nuke pill, is that you're actually saving lives by doing it. It's like John Bolton says. It's like, yeah, well, you're better having the enemy suffer than having your side suffer, right? That's kind of what it goes down to. I mean, let's see. Dirty Dancer says just as many anti-interventionist libertarians as there are squad types. Oh, I agree right now. Absolutely. It's pretty evenly split right now between like the progressives and like the paleo morons and stuff. My point was just that over the last 30 years, the Republicans have been consistently far more hawkish than the Democrats have been. That's my assessment of it. But like, if obviously I'm a little bit biased when it comes to other issues, for full disclosure. I don't think it affects my assessment very much, but obviously I'm more inclined to support the Republicans on stuff like economics and everything as well. But, on social issues, I'm more likely to support the Democrats. So I think it kind of cancels out. I think, I don't know. We'll see what the chat has to say here. I kind of want to gauge, the sentiment of the chat. I personally think that the Republicans, in the post-Cold War era have been more hawkish up until Trump than the Democrats were up until Trump. But maybe that's wrong. I mean, I know that Bill Clinton did intervene in Yugoslavia, in the former Yugoslavia, and I give him credit for that, right? But I'm just talking like Iran, or not Iran rather, but Iraq, Afghanistan, obviously Iraq in the 90s, so on and so forth. So let's see. Nicholas says, I love Obama, but he had so many foreign policy blunders. See, that's the thing. That's why it makes it hard to love somebody, is because it's like foreign policy is the most important issue. So it's like, if you screw that up, it's kind of like what Reese said about Tulsi. Reese of Nightmare Fuel, he said that. With Tanky Tulsi, he said, I could agree with Tulsi on literally everything except for her Assad apologetics, and that's a write-off, done deal. Like, it's not going to happen, because that alone is a deal breaker. Like, sucking on foreign policy, that's the deal breaker. So that's my attitude right there. So let's see. Dr. Zhao says, I went to General Douglas MacArthur High School. Oh, that's base. That's base. Let's see. On like China and Russia, communist China and Russia, they wouldn't be in Venezuela. They wouldn't be making moves in the South China Sea. They wouldn't be invading Europe and taking Crimea. They get contained, bro. Oh man, I wish we had Truman back. I mean, again, I've criticized Truman, right? But Truman was pilled. He understood. Like, and containment, that's not even an interventionist ideology. That's just contain the beast in the layer, don't let the beast expand. But that today is super hawkish. In our era that we're living in, if you suggest simply containing these powers, you're seen as like a neocon ghoul, right? Like Truman didn't even suggest invading the Soviet Union. He was just, I don't want communism expanding out of it, right? I mean, neocon. By the way, neocon, that's not an insult. Like, I just want to make that very clear. Like, I know that Kyle and Jimmy and Abby and Gnome and all these guys, they'll just throw up neocon to dismiss an argument. Like, oh, well, that's from a neocon outlet or like a neocon funded outlet or whatever. It's like, and like, that's not an insult. Like, that's not the insult that you think it is, bro. So. Alan Ray says, I'm not even a hawk, and I think Truman Doctrine is based. See, that was kind of my point. It's like, it wasn't even hawkish. It was just common sense. It was it was the minimum. Like in the era that we're living in, it's refreshing to read and study Harry Truman because we don't have leaders like that anymore. Like, because again, Truman, in terms of what he was charged with, the world that he inherited, he wasn't even that hawkish because of course Japan attacked America and he simply finished the job and got them to surrender. And of course, containment, that wasn't about liberating the world from communism. That was simply about containing the spread of communism. A very reasonable foreign policy doctrine, right? That you would think everybody could get behind. But today, suggesting that kind of thing, that kind of doctrine against Russia and China, immediately makes you outcast as like a warmongering neocon. It's amazing, man. Amazing. Let's see. Nally's off to bed. Have a good night, Hawks. Have a good night, Nally. Thanks for being with us tonight. Nicholas asks, so Kevin, who are your top 5 world leaders throughout history? Oh, see, that I would have to make a video on. I can't do that right now off the fly. I'll forget people. I'll get the ordering. You know, I haven't really sat down and really think about that, to be frank. So, but you know, there is a list. Obviously, it exists. Like it is something that if you got me to sit down and went through a bunch of names, I can come up with a list. I have a general sense of whom I admire. Obviously, Reagan's going to be in there. I mean, Reagan liberated much of the world from communism. But you know, there's a lot of, but I mean, we're talking about all of history. Like, I mean, the last 50, 100 years, I mean, but all of history, that one I would need to really make a video on. But um, let's see. Dr. Zal says Obama was always hampered by his own promise to, quote, end the wars, end quote, and continued immense public bipartisan opposition to intervention. Yeah, see, that's the thing is like a lot of Obama's project was basically, it was basically touted as dismantling Bush's legacy. I don't think it worked as well because, of course, part of Bush's legacy is that Saddam's dead, that the Taliban was really pushed back. It's a lot harder to undo Bush's legacy than it is to undo Obama's legacy. I believe that Trump has been far more successful at undoing Obama's legacy than Obama was at undoing Bush's legacy because Bush ruled like a lion. He ruled like a hawk. He didn't care what people thought of him, and he made some moves. And Assad is forever dead, or not Assad, but Saddam is forever dead. Kind of hard to undo that, right? What are you going to do? Resurrect the guy? Not going to happen, right? Whereas Obama's whole thing was about, you know, he's going to do Obamacare. He's going to get that through. He's going to do, you know, we're going to make peace with Iran. We're going to give them money. We're going to lift the sanctions. and we're going to pull out of these regions. The only thing that Trump's kind of continued is the withdrawal from the regions. But of course, he's done everything that he can to dismantle Obamacare, and so McCain opposed that and kept it in force. But I mean, it's a very tenuous sort of and fragile legacy, if you will. I don't think Obamacare and stuff like that is going to be around in 10 years. I don't see it lasting. And additionally, the Iran thing, Trump undid that like almost overnight. So a lot of Obama's legacy, I mean, really the only things that have lasted with Obama's legacy are like North Korea has a lot more nukes now, which he enabled, and the Taliban is like, gaining more territory, which he did enable, but Trump exacerbated. I think it's a lot easier to undo the legacy of a pigeon than it is to undo the legacy of a hawk, because a hawk doesn't care about getting reelected, and a hawk isn't feeble. Whereas Obama, he really was feeble. I mean, even just look at the example of gay marriage, right? He was against it until 50.00000000001% of America was for it. And he's like, oh, I evolved. Now I'm for it. Oh, man, how pathetic. Like George Bush was on the wrong side of that, obviously, in my view. I support gay marriage. But George Bush had convictions. Like, if 99% of America supported gay marriage, he personally would probably still be against it with Obama. There's no principles. There's nothing like that. It's just, oh, what does the majority say? I'll do that. Like, okay, that's a weak way to manage a country. You were appointed to be a leader, not a follower. That's dumb. Like, you would want your leader to be a lion. You wouldn't want them to be constantly gauging the popularity of something and then constantly flip-flopping and going back and forth. Like, really, you're supposed to be the commander-in-chief, and you're weighing all of your decisions on like, oh, is it 49.99999% approval, or is it 50.00001% approval? Oh, I'll change it. It's like, oh man, that's so sad. That's so sad. Like, either be for it regardless of what the people say, or be against it regardless of what the people say. Don't just flip-flop like that. That's weak. I don't like that. It just seems so fake too, because of course he was opposed to gay marriage for quite a while, and then like just slightly over the 50% mark, and now all of a sudden he comes out and I guess he's woke, I guess he's enlightened. It's like, no, it's so cheap, man. It's so cheap. It's fake. I mean, you could say, of course, well, Kevin, that there was a real outcome that it helped and improved people's lives by him coming out and supporting it, and I get that. Obviously it was the right thing to do. I'm just saying, Obama, he didn't have those kinds of convictions. I would like to see somebody who's like a liberal hawk that has socially liberal convictions and doesn't care about the popularity. They just, they get their term, they're going to do what they think is right and follow through on it. Obama was not the kind of guy who should have been president. He was the kind of guy that probably should have been a professor in constitutional law. A smart guy, really smart guy, but not really presidential material, honestly. McCain would have made a way better president, in my view. Like, it's not even close. McCain was unwavering. McCain was a man of conviction. McCain was a war hero. I mean, like, you go with McCain, 100 out of 100. But let's see, what else is there on here? Yeah, and Anthony Avistubi-Son is here. He says Obama is very similar to Nixon in the respect that he and Nixon were both concerned about their legacy. See, that's another thing, is like, it's kind of ironic. It's like they were the most concerned about their legacy, and yet in many ways their legacy was very easily undone, and Obama's in particular. Whereas George W. Bush, he didn't really care about his legacy, and I would argue that history will remember him in a far greater proportion than they will Obama, and the effects of his action to liberate 50 million people from tyranny in the Middle East and Afghanistan will be remembered for a long time. Obama will be remembered as a footnote who had a healthcare plan that got dismantled within 20 years and tried to reach out to Iran, and that got shut down very quickly after. and enabled North Korea to get a lot of nukes. Like, that's what he's going to be remembered as. Whereas Bush will always be remembered as the guy who took out Saddam and retaliated against the Taliban and Al Qaeda for 9/11 and waged the global war on terrorism, right? So I think that I think that Obama very clearly cared about the legacy thing more. Trump cares about his legacy too. He's got a big ego and everything. Bush didn't really care. He wanted to do the right thing, and he rode off in the sunset knowing that he did. But he knew he was unpopular, and he knew he'd be unpopular for a long time until eventually he'd be vindicated. And he'll probably be universally vindicated long after he's dead, unfortunately. But he will be remembered as a great, for sure, no doubt. So, the thing is, yeah, and of course he'll also be remembered for dealing with 9/11. But the thing is, as Jay of the work huddle says in the chat now, but the thing is, in many ways, it's kind of like the idea of like those people who like they want to get money or whatever. Like there are people who like they want to be a YouTuber so that they can make money. It's like, okay, but it's like a lot of the people that actually do make money on YouTube, they're not doing it for money. They're doing it because they have a passion for something, and people can see that they have a passion, and they get big, and then they make money. Like the money follows. The money is kind of a byproduct. It's kind of just it's a passive effect of their passion, right? That's true for any industry. If you just go into something for money, like you're never going to stand out, you're never going to make it, because things are cutthroat in the real world and things take dedication, and you'll be grinding for like 9 years before you ever really make very much money, right? It's like you have to be interested in something. That's kind of like Obama, whereas Bush is the kind of guy who like goes into something because he likes it and he's passionate about it, and then he becomes one of the best at it, and then the money follows later on. But like the money was never really a motivating factor. It's kind of the same thing with the legacy sort of thing. It's like if you're only focused on your legacy is going to suck, and you won't have a very good legacy. So, like I'm telling you, man, the leaders with the strongest legacies, they didn't care what people thought of them. They just did what they thought was the right thing, man. I'm telling you. Like you look at Churchill, you look at like all the base leaders in history, they didn't care at all what people thought of them. Bolton doesn't care at all. Like that's what I say. I call him cold and bold. That's my catchphrase for him. Because he doesn't care. He doesn't have an ounce of warmth in his heart for the enemies of freedom. It's non-existent. He doesn't care what the haters think at all. Like he doesn't care. He doesn't care. Like if he's eating lunch, he doesn't care if like there's 100 people around him and like they're singing his praise, or he's by himself. You know why? Because he knows that the dictators fear him. He knows that he's doing the right thing. He doesn't care. He doesn't care if he's hated or he's loved. He'd prefer to be loved, I'm sure, right? But if being loved would mean that he would have to compromise his convictions, he ain't going to do it because he's cold and bold. That's a real leader, man. So let's see what else is there on here. Anthony says it was very interesting also when you consider that Bush Jr. was a paleocon prior to being elected. The Times made him see the world for what it is. And yeah, that's also true. I mean, Reagan was somebody who had kind of paleocon tendencies, a lot of paleocons around him. But of course, the more neocon side of things went out at the end of the day because the nature of the world demanded action, and it demanded rising to that call. Donald Trump is faced with a similar situation, and he doesn't have it in him. He can't rise to the call. He can't do it. He can't do it. He can't muster it. It's sad, honestly. But yeah, no, that's a good take from Anthony right there. Let's see what else is there. W.R. Winter says in reference to Dr. Zaus, absolutely. I can't even remember what the motivation for picking Palin was. Yeah, McCain picked Palin. I mean, Palin was a meme. Palin was basically a meme. Like, I'm not even going to say too much because it's like on foreign policy, Palin could kind of go either way. Like, she didn't really have like the conviction and principles and stuff the way that McCain did. Like, She would have been a hawkish, I guess, because McCain was hawkish, but I don't know. I don't know. I mean, she's kind of more of like a populist type kind of person. I mean, let's see what else is there in here. Kettle says, I do YouTube because I love it, not because I want money. Don't get me wrong, the money is a nice bonus. See, that's the point. It's kind of like with being a president. The legacy is a nice bonus, but you're not being president to leave a legacy, so to speak. You're being president to make the right call in the moment. That's what you're hired for. That's what the job in the office demands. That's what the country expects of you. They don't expect you to be sitting there in a time of absolute crisis or impending doom, as in the case of North Korea, and saying to yourself, how will history remember me? I want to make a good legacy. I want people after I'm gone in 5 years. See, that's another thing. It's not even that George W. Bush didn't care about his legacy. I mean, obviously, he wanted to be remembered as a good guy, but he chose the long game over the short game. Obama is remembered as good in the years following his presidency. Bush will be remembered as good several decades after his presidency, or a century after his presidency. He knew that he was in it for the long run, and of course George W. Bush, he himself, he's like a Christian and everything. I'm sure he expects that like his consciousness will survive and he'll be aware of it. You can make that as an argument to say, well, his assessment of time might differ from, say, an atheist or something, but Obama's a Christian too, so Obama just had a much shorter time frame within which he was considering his legacy. Obama will probably be remembered kind of nicely by people for the next 20 years because he ended the wars or whatever. But of course, history is going to remember and vindicate George W. Bush as the guy who actually took the tough means to get rid of a lot of really bad actors in the world. And most notably, of course, Saddam Hussein. I mean, just that alone. In cooperation with Tony Blair, of course, and the coalition. But Olympian God asks, what do you think about a poll taken recently that the Germans do not want to help their allies, including the U.S.? Oh, yeah, that's not surprising. They've been living it cushy, super cushy in the post-Cold War era. In West Germany, even longer throughout the Cold War era, propped up by American investment and supported by American defense, so that they can spend their money on like a welfare state. And they've gotten cushy, they've gotten cozy, they've gotten lazy, and now they're in such a point of entitlement that now they can crap on America that pays their bills and offers them protection, and then say, we're more woke than you. We have a better healthcare system than you. Yeah, dude, you wouldn't have a healthcare system if America didn't pay your defense bills. You'd be like a Russian slave state. Oh man, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. Like the thing about Germany is like Germany makes a lot of cool stuff. Like they make awesome cars. They got a lot of really smart people over there. But like their leaders, man, the culture that's been allowed to fester there, yeah, it's pretty anti-American. So but yes, to answer your question, Olympian God, I think it's disgraceful, like to be blunt about it. Like I could go on, but it's like you guys know where I'm coming from. Let's see. Dr. Zhao says Obama undid Iraq and Trump gave Afghanistan back to the Taliban. Yeah, that's like their legacies. Like Obama's legacy with foreign policy is more he gave up on nation building in Iraq, ended the course, didn't stay the course, couldn't stay in, he had to pull out. And on North Korea, he allowed them to get hundreds of nukes. Pathetic. I mean, he literally just spent 8 years pretending that North Korea didn't exist. Like, it's not like he was out there writing love letters to Kim like Trump is doing. He just didn't acknowledge it. And you could say, well, maybe that's better, right? Because he's not praising the dictator. No, it's really, really bad because at least with Trump, it brings attention to how disgraceful what he's doing is. With Obama, everybody forgot about North Korea. I think in the long run, people are going to think about what Trump has done and say Trump actually brought more attention to the problem in North Korea by showing for them so hard because people realized, hey, wait, this is kind of gross. Whereas with Obama would always be like, I hate what's going on there, but we shouldn't do anything because that could lead to war and more bad. Okay. And people are like, okay. It's like, what? I'm going to bring the picture up again. Like, this was not a thing in 2006. The reason why these missiles exist is because of Obama. And yes, those missiles can put a 400 kiloton warhead on Washington D.C. right now. Right now. Like, if Kim gives the order. Oh, it's so peaceful. So peaceful. Why not peace? Give peace a chance. Amazing, man. Amazing. Amazing. Let's see what else is there here. Dr. Zhao says Palin was proto-Trump, and a lot of the stuff she said was only as stupid as what Trump says. Yeah, but Trump's more confident. That's what Zhaus is saying. Yeah, see, that's the thing. I think that analysis of Palin is spot on because I said she was kind of like populist ish, but like not as we kind of see populism today. A proto manifestation of it. That's a good point. A primordial populist, a precursor to populism. It's a good assessment. I would concur with that. Olympian God asked, Kevin, can you explain why Trudeau and other Canadian politicians hate and do not want to buy the F-35 fighter jet? Oh, it's a mess. It's a total mess. It's a total mess. Canada's even looked at purchasing like aircraft and stuff, and I haven't followed it as close as I should. But like old aircraft from like Australia and stuff, like you're like, wait, why are we spending money on this? There's a huge attitude in Canada right now. Not just right now, but like this is a long-term thing. Like when I went to school, it was a big thing too of like it's hip and woke to crap on the Americans, even though there are protectors, and the only reason we exist as a country is because of them, and we'd be a Soviet gulag without America, and they're our biggest trading partner, and so on and so forth. But no, we just crap on the Americans because the USA, they're bad. I guess they're mean. They'd like to think they're the world police or whatever. It's like, I mean, there used to be a time in actually in the Canadian political culture when it was a point of pride to be the peacekeepers of the world. In terms of the program, the legacy of like Lester P. Pearson, the idea of Canada as a humanitarian leader in the world. Now it's all, I mean, sure, there was a contrast to America in that, right? It wasn't just, oh, America's good too. But now it's like any intervention is seen as bad and not woke. And I guess not pilled or whatever. It's sad. It's sad, and some of it comes down to the fact that Trump and Trudeau don't really get along very well. Trump thinks of Trudeau as, I guess, kind of a soy boy, and Trudeau thinks of Trump as like a racist who, I guess, hates Mexicans or whatever. And of course, Trudeau's fan base doesn't like Trump, and Trump's fan base doesn't like Trudeau. But like America and Canada should be way closer. Like we're like the best of friends. We should be the best of friends. Like it shouldn't be a controversial thing for a Canadian to say that America is awesome, and it shouldn't be a controversial thing for an American to say that Canada is awesome. We both share so much. And I wish that Canada would pay the fair share dues to NATO. Like 1% military spending, really? What a slap in the face to America. America's spending like almost 3% on defense, covering everybody's asses. And we're like, we can't even spend 2%. It's pathetic, man. It's pathetic. Like, I wish that there was a Canadian prime minister that would just, at a minimum, spend the 2% on the military. I mean, what a joke. And like, definitely, like, I mean, just what a joke. So what's Dr. Zhaus asked? So what's Bush's real legacy in the Middle East if we ended up bailing on both of those wars? And that's a good question. This is where there's the nuance there. That's why I said it's a lot harder to undo the legacy of a hawk than it is the legacy of a pigeon, because a pigeon is defined that their legacy is pulling out, whereas a hawk's legacy is going in. And you could say, well, but America left, the West left for the most part, right? So where's the legacy there? Well, the legacy is that consequences of what Bush did in really spearheading the charge against the Taliban and of course Saddam, is that Saddam's dead. Like, you're never bringing Saddam back to life. Iraq today, for all of the sectarian conflict, and there is a lot of issues still there. There are a lot of issues there still. It's nothing like what it was under Saddam. The minorities aren't getting gassed. Iraq isn't going around and invading its neighbors anymore. Like that. That's the legacy of Bush. He killed Saddam. That you can never take that away from him. You can never take that away. What are you going to do? Resurrect Saddam? Like, the only person that can do that is the God King of warmongers. The God Reese. But he's busy. He's busy. It ain't easy being Reese, right? He don't have time for that, and he wouldn't do it. He's not really too much a fan of Saddam Reese. So. But I guess he could resurrect him. I mean, he's a hawk god. So let's see what else is there here. Alan Ray says, even when I was anti-interventionist, I believe that once you've intervened in a nation, you finish the goddamn job. So like, that's one thing. It's like a lot of people will say, well, America worked with Saddam, or America gave Saddam weapons, or America gave Saddam the gas. Not true. It was the Soviets and the French. But America for some time did in some ways cooperate with Saddam, of course, against Iran, which is a big evil, right? Post 1979. So it's like they ignore all context. They ignore the context of the Cold War, everything else. I mean, it's so disingenuous. But then they go on to say, they're like, therefore, America shouldn't intervene because America did bad things in Iraq by helping Saddam. And it's like, okay, but don't you believe in the policy of if you break it, you buy it? Like, if I agree with you and say that America's done bad things in Iraq, right? Doesn't that mean that then America has a moral responsibility to make it right? That's what Christopher Hitchens argued. Funny thing is, Christopher Hitchens actually used similar language to Noam Chomsky in reference to American interaction with Iraq. He described everything that America did with Iraq as imperialist. And he also described in some ways the Iraq war as imperialist. But he said that it was the right thing to do because it made up for all the wrongs that American imperialism or whatnot had done in the decades prior. And he said, Bush made a right. It was all motivated by an expansion of American interests, but that for once it was doing the right thing. And so therefore you should support it. And it's kind of that idea. Like, if you go into a store, you go into a liquor store and, I don't know, you pick up like a bottle of vodka and you smash it against the ground. It's like, yeah, you're going to pay for it. Like, if you just walk out, is that going to fly? No, you're going to have to pay for it because you broke it. It's like, so their argument, well, America did bad things in Iraq, therefore it would be wrong to intervene. It's like, no, now it would be even more incumbent on you to intervene. Like, Britain still intervened, but their argument is that it was America that had that relationship. So then it's even more incumbent upon America than it is on the UK, because America used Saddam to help them against the Soviets in some sense. That's kind of the argument. So now you owe it to the Iraqi people to say, well, we beat the Soviets. Now it's your turn. We're going to liberate you. That would be a moral foreign policy. That would be like an extension of kind of like Jeane Kirkpatrick's worldview, where Jeane Kirkpatrick said, yes, you work with right-wing dictators that are against the Soviets, but after we defeat the Soviets, then you pressure them to reform, or you get heavy-handed so that they reform, right? You don't just give up and say, man, not a problem. Like, no. The reason why you tolerate them in the first place is because there's a bigger evil. But once that evil's gone, you owe it to those people to pressure the dictators to give them more freedom, right? You use your new leverage, and you have that leverage because they're your ally. That you have leverage over them in a way that other countries might not have because you've been working with them, like Saudi Arabia. America actually has a lot of leverage over Saudi Arabia in a way that Russia doesn't have, right? So America could pressure Saudi to reform a lot easier than Russia could. Saudi Arabia would just reject it if Putin said reform or whatever. But but if Iran was gone and Iran was liberated, America would be in a position to say to the Saudis, now it's time to really start giving women freedom, lifting your persecution of the LGBT community, all that kind of stuff. And the Saudi royals now are in a lot weaker position because there's no longer this common enemy. And if they don't comply, then they become the new enemy, right? And if they do comply, then that's great. Then you've avoided another war. And because they're your ally, you still trade with them. But now they're moving in a direction towards reform. It won't happen overnight. It could take decades. But that way you don't have to actually do military action as in the case of Iran where they're your enemy and there's no leverage or anything. You're never going to see eye to eye. That's kind of the attitude there. That's kind of the pill there. I'm going to go back to the chat and see what's new. Let's see. So I'm about 10 minutes behind, of course, because I usually give answers and then I pick up on the chat from where I left off. See. W thought they were enriching uranium, then why shouldn't he be held accountable for not attacking? I don't really understand the question. I'm kind of tired right now. I had a 10-hour day at work, so you're gonna have to rephrase it. That might actually be phrased well. I can't really make out what you're getting at right now. Dr. Zaus, oh yeah, the PG-13 thing. Well, the thing is, it's as I get more subscribers and get bigger and stuff, yeah, we'll probably have to tone down the language a little bit. We're trying to move the channel in a direction now where it's a bit more serious. Obviously, we've got 4 moderators now. We're reaching about 6,000 to 7,000 people a month, individual users. That's increasing. Doubling every month or so at the moment. So we're getting bigger, and I think as we do come up on 1,000 subscribers, it would probably be more appropriate to move towards there's still going to be the memes and stuff. It's just it's not just going to be so over the top in terms of the vulgar language and stuff. That's going to be more reserved for when I'm in a really ranty mood. Like this, for example. I mean, I was pretty upset about this. People would characterize the Rwandan genocide as a success of the West. The West didn't intervene. Nobody would outright say it was a success. Everybody would say, "Oh, it was bad what happened." But Noam Chomsky wouldn't have done anything. Kyle wouldn't have done anything. Bill Clinton didn't even do anything. I mean, at least to Bill Clinton's credit, he wasn't an isolationist. He did intervene in former Yugoslavia. And honestly, in credit to Bill Clinton, it took more political courage to intervene against a Russian ally like Serbia than it did in Rwanda, where the Russians wouldn't have cared either way. So it did take a lot of courage to stop the genocide in Yugoslavia. I just wish that the genocide in Rwanda could have been stopped too. But let's see. Of course, the paleocons would say, you care about people outside your borders. And I would say, yes. It's like that yes meme. It's yeah, you don't. It's okay. Yeah, that's not the own that you think it is. That's not I gotcha. You care about people outside your country. It's yeah. No crap. Okay, well, we can get back to the chat. I do appreciate the chat. I do appreciate everybody being with us, especially since YouTube has been finicky with recommending this and notifying people of this. So I appreciate you guys doing the work to show up. Dr. Zaus, of course, referencing the scandal. Well, Trudeau's had a lot of scandals. I'm not the biggest fan of Trudeau myself. Not the biggest fan. I think he's kind of a cringy guy. So See, Olympian God says Russia's economy is so weak that they were only able to buy a few dozen Sukhoi 50 fighter jets. And India even pulled out of the project. That's true. Big up India. I want to see India buying like American, Canadian, British hardware. I don't want to see them buying stuff from Russia anymore. Like it's unfortunate that they ever did in the first place. I get that Nehru wanted to be like non-aligned, and they went on a policy where they were even kind of more in the camp of the Soviets and stuff. But I do like that they are moving away and getting off of dependency on Russia for military hardware. That's a good development. India is our friend at the end of the day. We need to be working more closely with India. India understands that communist China is a menace. India understands that democracy is valuable. India is the largest democracy in the world. India has, it is developing, but they have a capitalist economy. India, in many ways, aspires to be like us, and we need to help them get to the level of economic development that we have here. I mean, can you imagine India as our ally when like they're making as much money as like Canada per capita, and they've got like 1.5 billion people or whatever? Imagine how powerful they would be as an ally against like communist China. Like, I want that. I don't like that India's impoverished. I wish that we would have everything made over there and give the people over there a real economic opportunity to lift themselves up outside of, what China's done, because India actually shares our values in many ways. I mean, sure, there are problems in terms of a lot of the patriarchal culture and stuff that's there, but I would argue that as economic development occurs, a lot of those outmoded, cringy kind of patriarchal attitudes will dissipate as women become rich and bowling too, right? Because that's what happened in the West, and it'll happen there. They're our ally. They're not our formal allies, so to speak, not in the sense of like NATO or anything. But we really do need to get serious and recognize that India is our friend, and so that's my attitude there. I'm done with communist China. I never want to see another thing made in communist China. I want to blockade them. I want everything made in like India and Canada and the US and Taiwan and Southeast Asia and stuff. I'm done. I'm done. After this virus, I'm done with communist China. I'm done with the neoliberal status quo. I'm done with doing things the same way as we always do. I'm done. I'm done. It's time for change, man. So let's see. Olympian God says, what do you think about Russia's new strategic weapons revealed last year? Talking hypersonics, glider, etc. Do you think mostly it bluffed to portray themselves as strong because they're weak? Well, we've actually talked about that. It may have been on my show. It may also have been on Reese's show, but mirrored on my show. We talked shortly after the Russians were testing. This would have been late last year, if I recall. The Russians were actually testing a new hypersonic missile that was powered with a nuclear reactor, and it was being tested in the vicinity of Arkhangelsk in northwestern Russia on the White Sea. And the missile exploded shortly after its launch. It exploded and it released into the surrounding vicinity highly radioactive isotopes, and of course this was picked up shortly after by the radiation level monitoring device that they had over on the city hall in Arkhangelsk, and they initially alerted the people there, hey, look, we've got a big spike in radiation. Take appropriate precautions, get your iodine ready, that kind of stuff, or leave town. And people were like, oh crap, something happened, over at the base, like 40 kilometers away or whatever. Anyway, the federal Russian government out of Moscow later retracted that and said, oh, no, there's no radiation spike. And it's like, oh, here we go again. Here we go again. Of course, there's no radiation spike. How could there be a radiation spike? The dear leader Putin is in charge. Nothing can ever go wrong. All is right. It's like the Teletubbies land. Oh man, so cringe. They always do it. But of course, the Russian people, they're pretty cynical by and large, and like they could kind of read between the lines, and they still knew that something was up. Anyway, people died in that. The thing was a miserable failure. Miserable failure. And it's unfortunate because I get it. With each new project that you do, there's going to be hiccups and there are going to be kinks to work out. But the Americans did all this stuff back in the 50s and 60s and found that it really didn't yield any workable products. So, like, what are the Russians, like, who are they trying to fool? Like, they're going to show that, like, America didn't try hard enough and that's actually possible to make this work. Like, their economy is smaller than, like, New York's. Like the state of New York. They're the largest country in the world. They have 140 million people. New York State has a bigger GDP than they do. They're rinky dinky and rusty dusty. Really? They're going to like outperform us with like these hypersonic nuclear powered cruise missiles? Nah, it's all bluff, man. That's why it was all like a CGI video that Putin had where he was using one of these against Florida. Like, it's just cute graphics. They don't have it. It's total bluff. And Ray says that's an excellent point, but this is from a long time ago in the chat. This is from like 12 minutes ago, so I'm not exactly sure what he was referring to. But thanks. I've got a big ego, so I'll take the compliment for sure. Olympian God says, Kevin, there's a fantastic PDF file on the internet debunking every Noam Chomsky lie. Oh man, if you could send that to me, like I'm on Twitter, DM me or whatever. Send me that. That'd be based. We could even go through it like on a stream sometime. Get like the Hawks together, go through, dunking on Noam Chomsky, Nutter Noam, snoring and boring. That's what I call Chomsky, snoring and boring. Like, I know that a lot of people find him like hip and he's woke and all this stuff. I like, even if I agreed with him, let's keep it real. He's snoring and boring. He's not a really high energy guy. So Alan Ray says, my cousin's all into Chomsky. Yeah, see, like, I don't get the appeal, man. He's boring. Honestly, I get the appeal to Jimmy Dore more than I get the appeal to Chomsky. At least with Jimmy Dore, there's the comedy. He's kind of edgy. He's passionate. He spits in Alex Jones' face. So, like, that's kind of new. That's a new angle, literally. I mean, so you can see he's kind of an entertaining person. It's kind of like a circus. Like, there's a spectacle there to behold. Noam Chomsky, it's just snoring and boring. Like, they have the same arguments. They're both want to keep the dictators in power. But, like, let's keep it real. Jimmy Dore is more entertaining to watch than Noam Chomsky. I don't understand it. Noam Chomsky is overrated, man. Noam Chomsky is he's an overrated dude. Cringy and a fringy dude, no doubt. Olympian God says, I don't know why people listen to that old senile man on political issues. Just because he's good at linguistics doesn't mean he's good at politics. Yeah, 100%. It's like, oh, I'm good at linguistics, so I'll be good at politics. Or as Trump famously said, I'm good at business, so I know economics. It's like, really? Those are like, they're different faculties. Like, economics is social science, business is business. Which, by the way, for the record, not so good at business. 6 bankruptcies. He's Big Dad Don, dude. He's Big Dad Don. I mean, there's a quote. I'm paraphrasing it. This isn't verbatim, but basically, Ivanka and him were walking around downtown New York around Christmas time. I guess it would have been back in the 80s or whatever. And Big Dad Don says to Ivanka, she's young and everything, and says, hey, my daughter, see that homeless man over there? He's like, begging for money on the street. And she's like, yeah, Dad. And Trump's like, well, he's $1 billion richer than I am, I mean, how sad you inherit $400 million. And then within like a decade, you're over $1 billion in the hole. How sad, man. How sad. Business genius. Because like Bill Gates, like he's a business genius too, but like he never went bankrupt and he actually has a positive net worth. So like, funny how that works. Yeah. Is it surprising that the only money that he could ever get, the only credit he could ever get now is from the Russians? No, it's not surprising. Of course it was going to be the Russians. Like, Nobody else was going to loan him money for his stupid golf courses because he never pays up. Like he stiffs his own workers. He defaults on his creditors. He's done it like 6 times. And like he'll tout it as like, no, dude, it was a smart move. I've had people, they're like big Trump fans, try to pill me on this. They try to red pill me on Trump and be like, no, dude, he's a business genius. Because what you don't understand is like when he went bankrupt, he didn't lose the money. His creditors lost the money. So that was smart. And I'm like, yeah, but like Bill Gates didn't default and he's got like tens of billions of dollars. Donald Trump defaulted. It's like really? Like, oh, it's like, what is he playing, like 6-dimensional chess? Like, I know how I'll become a billionaire. I'll go bankrupt. Like, what? Really? Nah, dude, he's not a billionaire. There's no way he's a billionaire. The only way that he's a billionaire today is if it's in the red. Like he's a negative billionaire. That's the only way. That's the only way. I mean, look at his foreign policy. There's a reason it's so pro-Russian, because he owes them money. He literally, even his own son admitted it. His own son admitted a few years ago in a golf magazine that they got the financing for these golf courses in Scotland and stuff from the Russians. Like it's obvious at this point. It's obvious too. Like this isn't a conspiracy theory. Alpha Bank loaned him a crap ton of money, right? So let's see. We got Alien Millsrow here. Yeah, we're gonna move on. I like this comment from Nicholas. He says, "Go to bed, Millsrow. Good night's sleep is important." I agree. Lumping God says, "Nowadays, anyone who knows how to scream thinks he's good at politics." Example, or rather, Exhibit A, Kyle. And with that, we're going to take a look at Kyle. I'm just going to remove this comment here so that we can appreciate Kyle's ability to like scream and do stupid antics and stuff. It's only like 15 seconds, so bear with me here. Take a look. Oh, the finest in political commentary there, my friends. What genius. Genius. Great A. Top-notch political punditry right there, right? No doubt. Dr. Zhao says, "I wish the Sam Harris versus Noam Chomsky debate happened." Oh, yeah. No, that would have been. I mean, oh, man. Chomsky, Nut or Noam, he would have gotten blown out of the water. Like, Sam Harris is pretty pilled. Noam Chomsky, he would not know what hit him. I mean, that would be one for the ages, the amount of wreckage that would happen. Oh, wow. Ray says, paleocons can kiss under the oh man. Yeah, no, we're not fans of the paleo morons here. Let's see. Oh yeah. He's also saying so can neolibs. I'm not a fan of the neolibs. The neolibs hate me, man. The neolibs hate me because like I'm not down with like usury. I'm not down with lifting sanctions on dictators. I'm not down with war should only ever be the last resort. I'm not down with Obama was dope. I'm not down with all this crap. I'm not down with the cancel culture. I'm not down with the woke bros. I'm not down with the soy boys. I'm not down with it, man. I'm not down with the neolibs. Like the neolibs are cringe, man. The neolibs are unadulterated cringe. I mean, neoliberalism at this point is basically like if you put all the cringiest elements of like the socialists and all the cringiest elements of like the Elizabeth Warren bros, and you put all the cringiest elements of like the AOC stands, and you put all the cringiest elements of like the Tulsi Gabbard supporters, and you put all the cringiest elements of like Emmanuel Macron, and you put all the cringiest elements of Obama together, and you put them all in the blender, and you threw in like some Georgism and some environmentalism, and you threw in some soy, and you blended it all together. Oh man, that's literally neoliberalism. It's a hodgepodge of cringe. It's a binge of cringe. Not a fan. Let's see. Oh, not to mention the open borders, bros. Like, that's another thing. The neolibs are literally for open borders. Like, the open borders thing is like kind of a meme. Like, even TYT tries to like kind of shy away from the label, even though they promote open borders a lot. But like the neolibs, they'll be the first to tell you, you know, like the Charlie Kirk types too. They'll be the first to say they want open borders so that they can get cheap labor for, like, you know, basically their like, I don't like to use populistic kind of language, but like, you know, corporate elites or whatever, generally speaking, like the Koch bros and stuff. But like, it's objectively true. Like, I'm not an open borders guy. I believe in immigration. I'm not a paleocon. But like, really? Like, we should just do away with the immigration process because I guess it's not woke. Like what is this? I mean, that's the thing. It's like neoliberalism is basically Elizabeth Warren on economics, Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian on social issues, and Charlie Kirk on the border, Ron Paul, you know, and then of course on wars, they're like Obama. They're like, let's talk with the dictator first. Let's see how they're feeling. Let's try to make friends with Kim and the Ayatollah. Let's lift sanctions. Maybe if we lift the sanctions and we give the dictators money, then they won't oppress their people. Oh, they used the money to buy even more expensive equipment to oppress their people? Who could have seen that coming? Now, I'm not a fan of the neolibs. Not a fan of the neolibs. And they don't like me. And most of them on Twitter are blocked. And some of them blocked me. Like, obviously, the main neolib account, he blocked me. You know, he's got like 50,000 followers or whatever. Bad Econ Takes blocked me. Or, no, he hasn't blocked me yet. But he'll often like highlight my post to like try to do like his little gotcha thing where it's like basically Bad Econ Takes is to neolib Twitter what we was boomers is to, like, you know, the Kyle type Twitter. It's cringe. It's just basically gotcha. It's like, oh man, give me a break. Give me a break. I mean, these guys, I mean, I kind of sound like Jeb Bush there. You know, cool guy. I like Jeb Bush, but let's keep it real. Trump did win in the meme war against him, and we can learn from that. We can absolutely learn from that. We need to get neocons that know how to meme, that can out meme people like Trump and expose them as pigeon crap. You know, like, I'd rather be a hawk than a pigeon crap. So what else do we have? Yeah. So Bad Econ Takes, basically Bad Econ Takes, almost certainly, even though he's anonymous, almost certainly is either freshman or sophomore econ major at some like expensive university that his parents pay the tuition for, where he literally masturbates to Paul Krugman textbooks, and then he posts screenshots of my tweets to like expose me. But hey, I gained followers, so like, I don't care. Like, I really don't care that a bunch of neolibs don't like me. And oh, you sound like a conservative. You sound like a Republican. It's like, I don't care. I really don't care. I don't care. Like, you're not going to cancel me. You're not going to woke scold me. It's not going to work, dude. It's simply, it's not going to work. Like, you can tell me I don't understand economics or anything. It's like, I actually have an economics degree. Bad Econ Takes almost certainly is run by, like, as I said, a freshman or a sophomore who, like, I guess he knows how to do a supply curve. It's like, oh, you know, maybe he knows how to model an indifference curve now. Maybe. And he masturbates to Paul Krugman textbooks, like super dorky and stuff. It's like give me a break. Like, I'm done with the neoliberal types. I blocked a lot of them because of the drama and stuff. And like, I'm not going to take up too much time on that. Obviously, we got through a lot of the important stuff tonight, of course, right? So there's value in that, no doubt. There's value, right? And I think it's a good thing that a lot of the neolibs have either blocked me or most of them I've blocked myself, because Twitter, honestly, is less toxic. There's still toxic times on Twitter for sure, but Twitter has been a much more enjoyable experience since I blocked the neolibs. I mean, they were more cringy and annoying than the socialists. I mean, how unfortunate is that? I mean, I know I don't interact with the socialists as much, so, you know, I guess in that sense it's a selection bias. And I'm guessing now that they're kind of weeded out, I'm going to have a bunch of socialists show up and try to woke scold me and stuff, for sure, no doubt. But like, I'm just saying, even the socialists that I've seen, some of them, and Reese pointed this out to me, they're dunking on neoliberal Twitter for like falling in love with Tulsi and doing the horny posting and everything and all this. And it's like Neolib Twitter is a meme at this point. It's a meme. Like the entire ideology is just a meme. It's principleless. It's just, oh, boot like the current establishment or whatever. I know a lot of people will accuse me of like being a shill for the establishment. It's like, what? Like, you think that George Bush and John Bolton and like Pearl and Wolfowitz are like the establishment? You think like the neocons have all the power still? Really? Really? Like, again, it goes back to my point. Like, my opponents live in 2003. I live in 2020. So like when I make videos and I do streams and I offer my commentary, I'm offering that in the context of right now, of course, May of 2020. When my opponents levy their charges of me as like a shill for the establishment, they live in 2003. Like, those comments were posted in 2003, even though they wrote them yesterday, even though Kyle made his video yesterday or whatever. Kyle's videos are, they should all just say uploaded November 2003, because that's what, like, it is eternally November 2003 for him. It's like he's got a reverse time machine or whatever. It's just stuck. It's broken. It's broken, bro. Anyway, we're going to take a look at the chat again. I'm going to get some water. We're going to wrap up the stream pretty soon, but you know, I had a lot of things to say tonight, so. Let's see what we got going on in the chat. Let's see. Dr. Zal says it would be dope if New York invaded Russia. Well, New York would win against Russia. I'm sure New York has a bigger navy than Russia does. Italy has a bigger navy than Russia does. Kevin, what is your response to people who say they prefer a brutal dictatorship, left or right, over a democratic system because bureaucracy bad? Interesting question. Really interesting question. I'm against bureaucracy in general. I find a lot of government bureaucracy to be cringy. I find it to be superfluous. Welfare statism, super superfluous and actually detrimental. It stigmatizes people being poor. It penalizes them trying to work their way out of poverty. I support a negative income tax. I want to get rid of welfare. I want to get rid of all the means tested type stuff and just streamline it, you know, so the bureaucrats can get a real job. I'm not too much a fan of bureaucracy. I think that the few agencies of government that do need to continue to operate are like, you know, emergency services, of course, the military, obviously the legislative bodies, of course, and regulatory bodies to a reasonable extent, right? I'm not big on, you know, over regulations or anything. I also understand that you do need to have regulations and you do need to have bodies that enforce inspections to make sure that people comply with them because they'll have incentives to cut corners. I get that, but welfare, there's no argument to keep the welfare state around. Negative income tax would help the poor far better. Taxing the working poor to pay for welfare is gross. It's grotesque. I despise a lot of the bureaucracy. And of course, one of the reasons why we still have welfare is because there's a powerful input and pressure from those who are employed as bureaucrats to manage the welfare system to keep it afloat. And it favors certain political actors that can keep on having a desperate base to appeal to and say, hey, look, vote for me and I'll lift you out of poverty or I'll help you. And then they get in again and they continue the welfare payments. And then nobody gets out of poverty because welfare discourages you working. It basically says, hey, you want to work? Okay, we'll take half of your paycheck. Really? Like that? What? That's capitalist? No, give me a break, man. So I despise bureaucracy in that sense, right? But to get to your, you know, the actual substance of the question that was posed. Well, it's a tough one. I'm against it. Overall, I'm against it, but there's nuance there. If you're in a Cold War and your enemy, say, for example, is the Soviet Union, and you work with Pinochet, so that you have a foothold in South America against the communists, and then you win the Cold War. It was smart to work with Pinochet. Obviously, there were other reasons why America won the Cold War, but I'm just saying, refusing to work with any dictatorship because they're a dictator is stupid. You should be trying to work with other dictators like Saudi Arabia and stuff, because then you have more leverage over them to reform than if they were working with your enemy, right? And also you have a higher chance of winning the Cold War. That, like, I'm in the Jeane Kirkpatrick school of thought. Jeane Kirkpatrick was based and pilled, no doubt, but and she really, I mean, I'm going to be doing a series pretty soon. It's going to be called Neocon Icon, and I'm going to be going through, all the OG neocons and their work, their writing, their pills, And one of the big pills with Jeane Kirkpatrick, like, I'm probably going to have a multi-video series on her. It's like it's the nail in the coffin on the argument that, oh, well, how can you be against a dictator? You support dictators. It's like, in other words, you can't be against Iran because you support Saudi Arabia. It's like, no, we support Saudi Arabia because they help us against Iran. That's not a contradiction. And then we can use that leverage to get them to reform. Like, this is what it goes back to with Jeane Kirkpatrick. Like, it's a brain-led argument, basically. And I get the anti-interventionists all the time will say, well, but the West supports dictators. Sometimes they'll say Israel's a dictatorship. That's a whole other battle of cringe. But it's like they'll say, yeah, but how can you claim that you want to liberate North Korea when you support Saudi Arabia? Or how can you claim that you want to fight terrorism when you supported the Mujahideen? And it's like totally ignoring the context of the Cold War. Just so dumb. Just so dumb. Dirty Dancer says, Kevin is the only economics student I've ever seen that isn't a big fan of cheap labor. Well, there's some nuance with that. People would say, oh, you want sweatshops in India or whatever. It's like, no, I don't want sweatshops in India. I want cheaper labor in India. I want India to become like the new China. Not because like I want to like take advantage of India or whatever. Or no, they're at a point economically right now where it would be a step up for them and it would help us. We would both win. And then they can mature as an economy faster. And then they can contract out that kind of stuff to a different country. And then we can help them develop, maybe it's Kenya or something, and keep going through that process. And then Kenya develops. And then maybe they get like, I don't know, let's say Angola to be like the new, Kenya, which was the new India, which was the new China, right? And we can build up the world overall like that. Like, I'm not a protectionist in that sense. I support working with other countries. I support free trade with other countries, but I'm not for open borders. I'm for a reasonable immigration plan. Basically, you can come in, you can apply for citizenship, but you have to offer something to us economically. So like if you're a doctor or something like that, or an engineer, something that we need, that there's a demand for. And you got to speak the language fluently, and you have to share our values. Like, those are the three criteria, basically. And I don't care what race you are. I don't care what skin color you are. I don't care. But you got to be able to incorporate into society and be successful. If you let in like 5 million people and you don't give them the resources or anything, any one particular person, you're helping nobody in that process. Whereas in my immigration system, there would be a lot of resources allocated to each in particular immigrant coming in to help them integrate well into society, like big resources, because it's an investment, right? Because the idea is that, well, now they're going to be a productive member of society and fill a demand that we have here and contribute to our system. And I also support asylum, of course, right? Like, if you're fleeing Assad or if you're fleeing North Korea or something and you're able to get over here, then yeah, you have a claim to asylum. The caveat with that, and Reese and I were talking about this before, is like, the caveat is once those dictators are liberated and it's safe to go back, then you got to go back. Like, it's not a permanent thing, right? So, but I don't like the mass refugee crisis. I think it's stoked a lot of ironically, it stoked a lot of anti-interventionist attitudes, even though interventionism in Syria would have averted the refugee crisis. So, um, oh, we got a dude in here calling me a neoliberal. That's hilarious. Like, tell that to neoliberal Twitter. They hate me. They call me basically. Well, some of them call me a fascist. Some of them call me a neocon. Which yeah, a neocon. But what else is there here? Vuniper4 says, so give me the rundown. What's the stream about? Because for all I know, this is an online lawyer's appointment. Oh, basically, the stream is about basically that when somebody says give peace a chance, what they're basically saying is let this happen, like the Rwanda genocide. Don't intervene because intervention would be bad and it would be neocon, and neocon is bad. And 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 let this happen. That's peace. That's peace. Don't intervene in Syria because we're bad. We're bad. So let's have peace. So this is peace right here. So Assad gets to kill 600,000 people because it's his territory, his sovereignty, bro. And this is also peace. We let North Korea build up a bunch of nukes to point at us. That's also peaceful, bro. Let's have peace. So I hope that answers your question. That's kind of what this stream is about. So, but yeah, no, I'm not a neoliberal. I would reject the label neoliberal. There's so much of an overlap now between like neoliberalism and social democracy. Neoliberalism used to be a much more center right sort of thing. Now most neoliberals that I've interacted with are like center left or just outright left. It's interesting. So, but they'll use market terminology to sell their views. They're not going to pitch it to you like Jeremy Corbyn would. They'll have similar ideas in many ways, but they won't. They'll basically have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's ideas, but whereas she pitches it kind of how Bernie does, they pitch it in a way that sounds kind of like Joe Biden, where it sounds more reasonable than it is. So, let's see. LMB and God says AOC is a disgrace to Puerto Rico. We don't claim her. The New Yorkers can have her. Oh man, yeah, no, I'd be embarrassed too if she came from like my neighborhood or whatever, Yeah, I'm not a fan of her. Ray says, I've been called alt-right even though I have Mexican heritage just for saying I want secure borders and for people coming legally. See, that's another thing that's another thing that the neolibs will do because there's so much for open borders because they want cheap labor for their corporate overlords or whatever. They'll call you like alt-right. That's kind of like their sticking point. That's their talking point. Like to slander you is like, oh, if you're against open borders, you're alt-right. It's like, okay, way to make the alt-right look a lot more cool and a lot more reasonable to the majority of the population. Like, really? We're going to brand the alt-right as just anybody who's skeptical about open borders. Like, it used to mean something to be alt-right. Like, it still does. Don't get me wrong. That label is still useful. But, like, really, we're going to pervert and over-apply the label so much that anybody who, dude, it's white nationalism, man. Like, these guys, man, they're a joke. They're a bunch of clown balls. He says, stop shilling for neoconservatism. So stop shilling for myself. Okay. Dirty Dancer says, you can debate whether it is moral or not, but cheap labor is good for the economy and it's not controversial. So wait, are you for open borders? Like, because like I agree that like outsourcing labor to developing countries can be good for us and good for them. Like there's nuance there, but like I'm not full open borders or anything. That's kind of like my attitude. Being God says the neolibs are weird now. They used to be free market capitalists in the 80s, and now they're just sock down woke people. No, I agree. See, that's one thing. If you ask me if I'm a neoliberal in like 1980, I would say yes, for sure. Because then you got like Reagan, Thatcher, Mulrooney, obviously Milton Friedman, the Chicago boys. But now, what would Globe Twitter say about the Chicago boys? They call them right-wing conservative, unwoke, chuds. That's what they would call them. And they would cancel them. I've literally had the neolibs of Twitter message my friends and say, you're following Kevin Castley. Unfollow him or I unfollow you. Now, my actual friends said, well, GFY, I'm still following Kevin Castley. Deal with it, but some people caved into the pressure, and of course they got purged from the community, right? So let's see what's going on here. Oh, don't you just love how the neolibs say intervention bad? The world's problems are not ours. But when it comes to the borders, they say we should let them cross because they're suffering. No, that's another thing. They really, some of them are true believers. They really do believe that if we just give Kim enough money, give Putin enough money, give the Ayatollah enough money, that they'll just start being nice to their people. But of course, I always make the analogy. I always say, imagine the worst bully from high school. Now imagine you give that bully $1 million. Is the bully going to be nice the next day? Or is he going to be a total scumbag still, but now have $1 million to rub in your face with like Gucci swag and stuff? And like show up to school in a Beamer, like a brand new BMW. Of course he's going to be a bully still. He's just going to be a rich bully now. See, the neolibs are so dumb, man. So dumb. And I'm talking in the modern sense of neolibs. Like some of them will even have interventionists in their bio, or like Hawk in their bio, but like they hate the Hawks. They think that the Hawks are like alt-right, or they're too dangerous. They're for war. And it's like, why do you call yourself an interventionist? I know why they have that in their bio, because they think like the interventionists are like establishment, and they think it's hip, and they're contrarians. They basically want to be the establishment or whatever. It's so sad. It's so sad. Like, I mean, as Reese said, they're a bunch of dorks and dweebs, basically. It's like it's so sad, man. I mean, neoliberal Twitter has become a self-parody at this point. There's a reason way more of them are banned than like socialists are banned from me, or blocked rather. Because at least the socialists, like, here's the thing that I'll say about the socialists of Twitter. They at least have principles. I disagree with their principles, but like they at least know what they stand for. The neolibs, they just move as a group and cancel each other if they step out of line. They're like lemmings, and they just move around whatever's woke. And now they're like with the socialists kind of, but they still like to differentiate themselves and pretend to be capitalists or whatever. But they hate me, and they hate the Hawks. They think the Hawks are dangerous, man. They don't really actually stand for anything. Like if it became woke tomorrow, I guess, to like be a fan of Reagan, they would like start shilling for Reagan, or like if they thought that like Margaret Thatcher was attractive, they would like simp for Margaret Thatcher. But like that's another thing, is the whole simp culture that they have going on and stuff. It's really stupid. It's goofy. It's silly. Imagine that being your community, your ideology is like, oh yeah, we're the simp gang. It's pretty sad. It's really sad, actually, because like even the socialists, they stand for something. I disagree with what they stand for, but like they do have principles, right? These neolibs on Twitter, they're an amorphous mush of of slightly viscous liquid that's just kind of falling down with gravity towards the cringe. The horseshoe bends cringe word, right? It's sad. It's sad, no doubt. Why do you care to spread democracy in the world? Dude, I have like 205 or something videos on this channel. Go watch them. You'll figure it out. Let's see. Dirty Dancer, because people like you exist. Owned. Democracy bad, dictators good. Yeah, this guy's a brainlet. Let the people, the countries decide. That's his argument. Yeah, what do you think neocons want to do? We want to give people self-determination. You think the people of Syria have decided that Assad is their leader? Why does the country look like this if they decided that Assad's the leader? Obviously, they're not too happy with Assad. They want him gone, but he's fighting to hold on. So whose side are you on? Are you with the people of Syria, or are you with the butcher of Syria? Because I know when you talk about countries, you mean the regime. But that's pathetic, man. You sound like a Westphalian turd. Oh, man. There's so much cringe in the chat right now. We got a lot of base people in the chat. Let's see. Dirty Dancer. Yeah, I'm sure the people in North Korea love it, or they would have just voted him out, right? This guy's so clueless. He says North Korea has its own government system as a sovereign country, and the people generally support it, by the way. Yeah, because they get shot otherwise. Sovereignty. There he goes with the Westphalianism again, as if we're in like 1638. No, dude, or 1653 or whatever. Guys, Westphalianism only made sense when every country that was going to war was a dictator. there was no case to free anybody because if the other side won, they were also a dictator. Now we have democracies and dictatorships. So there's an argument that the democracies have a responsibility to intervene to liberate people from dictatorships. Westphalianism doesn't apply anymore. Westphalianism actually helped keep peace and reduce casualties back in the day because at least you weren't also going to die for some dictator in a war. But now Westphalianism is a disservice because now we need to do wars to liberate the world so that we can get back to peace. And then when the world is a bunch of democracies, Westphalianism will make sense again. And we won't go to war, and everybody will be free, and everybody will have self-determination. We're trying to get to that world, my dude. So let's see. This guy is so clueless. Like, I mean, there's a chance this guy's a troll, but given that the Nick Fuentes people have been pretty relentless, I think he's probably a fan. Oh no, we spoke with him before. He said, if I recall, that he was a national Bolshevist or whatever. Super cringy dude. Super cringy dude. Fringy dude. Like, he's just kind of going back and forth now. No, it's good. I appreciate you guys showing up for the stream, obviously, and we got a viewer on Twitch, and that's cool. And we got Alan Reyes here. He says, "Preach, Kevin." Yo, well, yeah, I ain't going anywhere. I'm speaking truth to fascist and communist power right now, and neolib cringe. Oh man, they're so triggered because like I'm a capitalist, but like I'm a Dave Ramsey pilled capitalist. These guys are like right now shilling for like the lending industry. They're shilling for like payday lenders, all this kind of crap. And like I'm out here saying like, hey, look, we can have capitalism without the whole culture of debt and stuff. And that this virus has really proven that we as a country need to focus on, getting out of debt. And as individual people, we should work on slowly building up our emergency funds and stuff. It's going to take years. Like, even if you're somebody who has a high income, you probably have pretty high expenses. It's all going to take us a long time, but we should all be working towards getting a 6-month emergency fund together so that when something does come up, and by the way, I'm not even saying like a pandemic or whatever, it could just be something personal in your own life comes up. That way you'll have money to pay for it, right? And sure, you could say, well, I don't have that kind of money or whatever right now, but like that's the point. We should start working on it together as a hot gang for sure. Because the thing is, it could be individual or it could be on a macro level, but at the end of the day, I'm not too trustworthy of the government, because the government doesn't even have the money anymore. They just have to print the money. This isn't like the 30s where the government could actually spend money to stimulate the economy. The government doesn't have the money anymore. We're in a debt economy now, and it's kind of cringy. And so the neolibs are like, how can you call yourself a capitalist? You're against debt. Debt is capitalism. Oh, how sad. How sad. They can't even imagine a better version of their own system. Like, it's not like they're communist and I'm a capitalist, and then you're like, oh, we don't have that much in common. It's like they claim to be capitalists. They're just so enamored and so defensive of the current system. It's like, why? I just don't get why you wouldn't want to make things better. Like, slowly make our system better, right? Like, I mean, I get it, right? I get it. Things come up. People have to go into debt for stuff. It happens to everybody, but we should be trying to move towards a country where, I'm against raising taxes, except in the case of defense and war, as well as to clear out debt. And we should be trying to clear out debt so that we can get back to a point of wealth. Like I am for example, somebody who is a fan of capitalism, but I want to get to a system that's like wealth capitalism, right? Where we do away with welfare, we replace it with negative income tax, and we make it so that even if you didn't just ban the lending industry, nobody would ever borrow money. Like, people would be financially secure enough not to have to do that, right? People would just buy a small house and then pay it with cash, and then buy a bigger house later and pay it with cash and keep moving up, as opposed to buy a big house and then finance it with a 30-year mortgage, and then you're paying the bank more money than you spend on the house over the 30 years. Like, really? Like, you buy $1 million house and then you give the bank 1.2 million as well to finance it. It's like, That's not a good system. And they'll say, yeah, but the debt drives the economy, bro. It's like, yeah, it drives this economy. This economy sucks. Like, you want to live in this forever? Like, no, I want to get out of this. I want it to be like, but so that by the year 2050, nobody's struggling to like just make bills and stuff. Like, I'm so done with the neolibs, dude. I'm so done. Like, these guys are so cringy. Like, it's like was mentioned. They're basically the woke bros. They're the soy boys on the cultural stuff. And then on the economics, it's just establishment memes and dorky and stuff. And Paul Krugman asks. And then on foreign policy, it's like, we're bad. Let's lift the sanctions on Iran. Let's do diplomacy. Oh, you're a shitlord if you're against diplomacy. What, you want war? You're dangerous. I'm so done. I'm so done. I'm so done. I'm so done, dude. Like the neolibs, dude. Give me a break. Let's see. Dirty Dancer says it will be funny watching Vosh trash him tomorrow using neoliberal and neocon economic arguments. Who are we talking about? Oh, Caleb Malpin. Oh, I get a sense this GXHX dude is not actually from Nick Fuentes. I get a sense he's actually from another friend of the channel. A friend who needs to clean his room. I get a chance that he's from that friend of the channel. Not the Nick Fuentes. The Nick Fuentes friend, he needs to get laid, but the other one needs to clean his room. I get that sense now from GXHX. I'm pretty sure that's how this guy found me. I know you're in the chat. You're from that dude, aren't you? Or maybe you're a stock account, in which case clean your room, Clancy. But let's see what else is there here. Says come to join and be a socialist. I can send you literature. I've read socialist stuff. I've taken a number of courses on Soviet history. Socialist realism, really boring. Real boring as far as like fiction type stuff goes. Really boring for sure, no doubt. The other literature, like Marx and stuff, Marx is kind of dry. A lot of the other ones aren't even worth the time really reading because they're not even really relevant, even in the meme sense of relevancy, but relevance rather. I agree with Dirty Dancer's sentiment expressed here. Writes, I hope every dictator dies the same way Gaddafi, with a knife. Absolutely. Absolutely. Except I beg to differ. I think that Assad and Kim deserve a telephone pole, not a knife. Let's see. Preferred Tolkien over Marx. Thank you very much. Oh, this reminds me of one of Arthur's memes. An OG Arthur meme from a little while ago. We're going to bring it up. This one's actually in reference to Vaush. I don't get the sense that this guy's a Vaush fan. For GXHX, are you a Vaush fan? I don't get the sense that you're a Vaush fan, but let me know. It's this one, like, no, read a different book. Haha, you're a wizard, Harry. And of course, that's a reference to how Vaush calls women that vote Democrat Harry Potter liberals, because they're not revolutionary socialists reading the literature of the dear leaders. It's really disgraceful. Let's just be clear with ourselves for a moment. Vaush is trash, and Vaush is a joke and a clown ball. Let's just be real. Just keep it real. Like, there's not even any doubt. Like, you hate to see it, but it's the case, right? It's the case. We gotta be honest with ourselves. The guy is a joke. So. Oh yeah, no, he's not with Vaush. I didn't think this guy was with Vaush. I didn't really get Vaush vibes from this guy. He says that Vaush is a neoliberal. I'm sure that Vaush would reject the label, but with the direction that neoliberal Twitter has moved, they're like 1% to the right of Vaush, maybe. I mean, they're like 2 days away from being where Vaush is on the political spectrum, because they've been moving left very quickly, right? So, yeah, no, Vosh would not like the term neoliberal, but you have to keep in mind he calls Charlie Kirk a neocon. Charlie Kirk, neocon. Kirk, neocon. Charlie Kirk opposes the war in Afghanistan. He opposed the war in Iraq. Neocon. Neocon. He agrees with Kyle. Kyle and him literally had a quote unquote debate, and it was just a circle jerk where they agreed on foreign policy. Sure, they disagreed on like culture war stuff, not important stuff, but on the real issue, like foreign policy, they agree. That's the only reason why Kyle even agreed to the debate in the first place, was because he won't debate a hawk. Like if he'll debate somebody on the culture wars, they have to agree with him on foreign policy. So it has to be like a right-wing isolationist. Kirk, neocon. No, Vosh doesn't know what a neocon is. Obviously, Kyle doesn't know what a neocon is. Kyle calls everything a neocon. Like Kyle calls Joe Biden a neocon. Oh man. Dr. Zhao says, I can't wait until Vosh snaps and turns on the lefties. Nah, they're going to turn on him, man. Like, he took a big hit endorsing Biden. That was, that's one of the few things that I'll give him credit for. That took courage. It took big courage. Because Kyle's a grifter. He went with his base and said, I'm not endorsing Biden. Screw it. My base is pissed. They're upset that their boy Bernie lost. And so I'm just going to throw meat to the lions, Well, they're not lions. They're pigeons. I'm going to throw bread to the pigeons. That's what Kyle did. We're the lions. He's a pigeon. Yeah, no, he's a grifter. Vosh, on the other hand, he does have convictions and he has principles. He's just kind of a cringy dude, and he's a socialist and stuff, and an anarchist, which makes it even cringier because it's like, oh, really? So you're going to enforce all this stuff, but you're not going to have a state. So, like, how are you going to survive a war, dude? Amazing. The tankies would destroy Vosh. Like, that's another thing. If Vosh got his little revolution, let's keep it real. The tankies would line him up against the wall and shoot him. They call him a degenerate, right? They call him a bourgeois degenerate with bourgeois sensibilities. They would call him some homophobic slurs for sure. That's what would happen if he got his little socialist revolution. So, because socialists, not too much a big fan of Vosh's kind of sensibilities for sure. They're more into, the classic aestheticized heterosexual male who's big and muscular, working the shock worker in the factories, right? That's the Conifite worker, right? Meeting the 5-year plan as delivered by the party through, and inspired by the will of Stalin, Comrade Stalin to the workers. They're not really a fan of Vosh going out there and talking about how, like, this dear girl on Twitch, how he thinks that she's like nice and stuff, but like doesn't think that she should be on the platform. Like, they're gonna call him every slur in the book, and they're gonna have him lined up and shot if he gets his little revolution. Like, I got news, Vosh. You ain't winning that. It's the most brutal comrade who wins at the end of the day. And I got news, dude. Like, I'm not a fan of you, but like, in fairness to you, you're not a psychopath. Like, Vosh is not a psychopath. He doesn't have it in him to do what Stalin did. So he'll end up like Kamenev and Trotsky and well, Trotsky was brutal. I'll exclude Trotsky. Trotsky killed like 5 million people, but for Lenin during the Civil War. But we'll go with like Kamenev and Zinoviev, right? The intellectual type, the type who just they're weak and feeble. So they vote for Stalin at the Politburo meeting because they're scared that Trotsky's going to have them executed. So then what does Stalin do? He has them executed. It's like, dude, I mean, yeah, it sucks, but like, you guys paved the way to hell. You guys overthrew the Tsar. You kind of asked for it. Like, you're the one who created hell in Russia. So, I mean, Yeah, I mean, it sucks. It sucks. You're like, it sucks that these guys, they got shot by Stalin. Sure, sure. It sucks for them, right? Yeah, what about the millions of people who died as a result of them overthrowing the Tsar? No, I wish the West really did more to support the Tsar in the Russian Civil War. We really dropped the ball there. A lot of world history could have been very different if the Whites had won that conflict and the Reds had been extinguished right early on. So HN says, who are the neoliberals in your mind? Yeah, Dirty Dancers basically got the right answer. I mean, they're not 14. Most of them are like 18 to 22 or so. They're like freshmen, sophomore econ students, cringy dudes and dudettes on Twitter. Yeah, I'm not a fan of them. Alan Ray says, how about the neolibs begin their revolution? Oh man. Let's see. Chris Redfield says, his name is pronounced Dr. Zaius, not Zaus. Zaius is a character from Planet of the Apes. It was also a song from The Simpsons. Oh yeah, no, it's a meme now. That's the thing. Like, I know how his name is pronounced, but I didn't when he first came into the stream a long time ago. So I call him Zaus, and people were like Zaus. So it's kind of a meme. So we know him as Zaus now. He says, I'm wasting my potential by being a neocon. You can do better, Matt. Like, what's that even supposed to mean? Like, I'm not going to say that you're wasting your potential by being a socialist, because let's be real. You're living your potential. You have a low potential. That's why you're a socialist. So. He says, politically, though, who are the neolibs? Okay, well, that's a good question. Basically, the neolibs are like, you can think of them as like the Obamas. They're the types of leaders who their first inclination is to do diplomacy and to lift the sanctions and to do trade with dictators as opposed to actually liberate the regimes. They're the type of people who they want the open borders. They want the cheap labor for the Koch bros. They're the types of people who like they'll be super woke on like social issues and stuff and like woke scold you and like call you racist over everything. Those types of people. Not really too much of a fan of the neolibs. So, and definitely the ones on Twitter are a joke. Like, it's a circus, man. Chris Redfield says, you're pronouncing his name like Vaush, but with a Z. Vaush. I'm not even sure. Like, I know people pronounce his name both Vaush and Vosh. Vosh. Let's see. Yeah, see, the funny thing about Hillary Clinton, though, here is that, yes, she often gets seen as like the poster woman for neoliberalism. Hillary Clinton is actually kind of hawkish on foreign policy. Her first inclination is to get tough on the dictators. So she's a bit different. I wouldn't call Hillary Clinton a neoliberal. I would call her a liberal hawk. That's what I would call Hillary Clinton. She's not a neoliberal. Obama was a neoliberal. She's a lot more hawkish than Obama was. She's a liberal hawk. She's like Joe Lieberman in that sense. So. Olympian God says, what do you think about the Trump administration talking about doing the nuclear test again? It was reported a few days ago. Well, this is an interesting question. I'm not sure how the people of YouTube are going to respond to this. I support it myself. Now, there's some nuance with that. The reason why I support it in the context is that in the 70s, I believe that the deterrent power of the American arsenal, even though the American arsenal has greatly improved and expanded, in recent years it's weakened. And why is that? It's because America's enemies don't think that an American president would ever actually use the nukes. They think that America's weak. They think America's like Merkel and Macron and Obama and stuff, and just they don't have it in them to use the nukes. So people aren't really scared of America's nukes anymore. They think it's like for decoration. It's a meme basically to make America feel good. That that American leaders, they don't have the will anymore to do it. I think George W. Bush was the last leader that the world kind of took seriously in that sense. And so with the nuclear test, I think that a nuclear test, because it would be out of the blue. Sure, you're not using a nuke in battle or anything, but I think that it would move the world back in a step where it wouldn't happen overnight, but people would start to get the message that the nukes aren't just there as a decoration, that America's serious about the nukes. Like, if you screw with America, don't be shocked if America nukes you. That should be the attitude. Like, America's enemies should think that America is willing to use nukes. That could keep the peace, so to speak, because the world is a lot more dangerous if your enemies aren't deterred by your nukes. Like how do you ensure nuclear deterrence? It's not simply having the nukes. We know this because Elizabeth Warren famously has proposed having a bill now that into the Senate that if America if it passed, America could only ever use nukes if struck first. Well, now you don't have a nuclear deterrent anymore because now America's enemies think, oh, well, if we attack and do enough of an attack at once, maybe we can take out their stuff before they can fire it back. Whereas with America having a first strike capability, being able to do a preemptive nuclear war, now it's a real threat. Now you think, hey, look, I don't want America to just nuke me out of nowhere. I'll be on my best behavior, Like, that's a simple way of looking at it. Now, obviously, a single nuclear test isn't going to change that 180 degrees, but maybe it changes it by 30 degrees. Maybe the world leaders out there think, oh, yeah, those nukes, forgot about that. Maybe America would use them in a war. Maybe we should be more careful and not screw around and prod America. That's why I support it. I support 100%. Like, if I were the president of the United States, I would be doing atmospheric nuclear testing and filming it and broadcasting it live. Like, none of this, oh, but the UN said it has to be underground and you can't do it after the 90s or whatever. It's like, no, I don't care what the UN says. Like, I want the enemies to understand, like, you better not start attacking people and stuff, So that I think that the world would be a lot more secure if the enemies out there thought that America meant business again. So, what else is there out there? Milo36 says, will you ever come on Vash's stream to talk about stuff such as foreign policy and etc.? Well, I have a policy where I'll do debates, but you got to pay me $100. So, American. So, let's see. What else is there on here? Dirty Dancer says, yeah, I have to disagree because neoliberal means warmongers, so I associate it more with Hillary than Obama. Wait, what? Is that a meme? Neoliberals are anti-war. They want to do trade with dictators. Neocons want to get tough on dictators. Well, Milo says, oh, well, I like HN. He says, screw the UN. Yeah, I agree. The UN is a joke. Like, really? You're going to have Venezuela and North Korea and stuff be like on the Human Rights Council? Well, I don't know about North Korea specifically, but like, you get the idea. Really? Maduro's going to be the head of that? No, it's a joke. And they always crap on Israel, and like all the resolutions are condemning Israel. And it's like, really? Israel's the biggest violator of human rights in the world? Really? And just the UN, screw the UN. NATO should be the new UN. I don't care what Russia and China, North Korea and Venezuela have to say about issues. I care what NATO has to say. I don't care. I don't care. I know what Putin's going to say. Putin's going to say, no, don't take out Assad. We like Assad. I don't care, man. No, dude, screw the UN. The UN has always been a compromise between good and evil. Why not have a compromise between really good and good, like in NATO? Like, I really like America, but the UK is pretty good too. And France is, they waver sometimes, but they're pretty good, relatively speaking. Let's have a compromise between them. Why have a compromise between Russia and the US? Let's have a compromise between the UK and the US. How about that? So, Milo 36 says, when I think of neoliberalism, I think of Milton Friedman's school of economy. Yeah, that's old school, almost like, Chicago and Friedman style economics, uh, old sort of liberal, neoliberal economics, for sure, for sure. We're talking about like the current contemporary sort of meaning of neoliberalism, which is a lot more social democratic, right? So let's see. Chris says the UN is composed mostly of snobby Western Europeans. That's not false, but there's also a lot of brutal dictators that send their ambassadors and stuff over there too. So it's both. It's like the champagne socialists from Europe who live rent free because of America's defense, but then crap on America and wokes go to America for not having their healthcare system, even though they can only afford their healthcare system because America covers their defense. Cringe, dude. I'm not a fan of social democrats. I think they're a joke. And then also a bunch of brutal dictators. No, the UN is a self parody at this point. Like, I mean, you look at what the UN puts out. I mean, Hillel Nuer talks about this all the time. If you follow him, it's all just Israel bad. Arab dictatorship's good. It's like if you read some of the resolutions that they come out, you would think that that was like an Onion article, like, oh, UN condemns Israel once again and ignores North Korea. It's like, no, that's real life. It's real life. UN's a joke. Ray Boo says Turkey shouldn't be in NATO, to be honest. I used to kind of think like that. I changed my mind. I want Turkey in NATO, but I want Erdogan taken out of power. Hopefully by CIA, that kind of stuff. He's got to go. But Turkey's useful. Turkey's still useful. Second largest army in NATO. You got to have them. You got to have them. You just got to get rid of Erdogan. So let's see. Alan Ray says, "Oh, we can't compromise between very good and good, Kevin. That's too idealistic, you libtard." Well, like that's what these people would say. The neolibs would say, "Well, we need to see what Putin has to say because, he's like I guess he leads a state or whatever." I'm like, "Yeah, he leads a rogue state. I don't care what he thinks. I don't care. I don't care what he thinks, dude. Like, I don't care what a thug has to say. I really don't. And in fact, I know what he's going to have to say. He's going to say, I veto your intervention. It's like, okay, cool story, bro. You're not like we're done with the UN. You're not in NATO, so you can't veto the intervention anymore. That's what I would say there. So let's see. Then you could finally deal with like Assad and stuff. I mean, the UN's a joke. Let's see. Yeah, and they also provide access to the Black Sea. That's an important point to note there for sure, no doubt. I mean, Black Sea, vastly important. I mean, Istanbul is one of the most strategically important cities in the world. So it's not even like an over exaggeration or anything. Read history. I mean, Istanbul is important as hell. But Alan Ray says, even if for argument's sake, let's say there is legitimate criticism to be made of Israel, I'm not going to listen to it if it's coming from an anti-Semitic POS. And I agree 100%. Like, oh, really? Like Iran's going to criticize Israel on human rights? Really? North Korea's going to lecture Israel on human rights? Russia's going to lecture Israel on human rights? Really? Nah, see, this is what I'm talking about. Like, the UN is a meme, and the neoliberals, they love the UN. They're like, they aestheticize. They're in love with Merkel. They're in love with Macron. They're in love with like all these weak leaders that are in debt and trade with Russia, huge. And of course, Merkel famously recently had the nuclear reactor in Germany demolished. Like, you can see the smokestacks going out. So they're going to be buying more energy from Russia. It's pathetic. It's pathetic. Oh, but nuclear power, it's bad. It's bad. Let's get our energy from Russia. Let's be woke. No, it's there's a reason the Russians fund the green parties, because they serve so that we can cut our own energy sectors by getting rid of our oil and nuclear production so that we can be more dependent on Russia. Like, it's not that complicated to figure out. Putin loves the Green Party so that they have to buy oil from Russia. So it makes all the sense in the world. The Green Party, they're fifth columns. Like they're actually working on behalf of the Russians. So what else is there here? Oh, well, of course, it's not going to happen under Trump. That's one of the reasons why Trump's got to go, because Trump is buddy buds with Erdogan. Olympian God says, what do you think about the media saying that Merkel is now the leader of the free world? I think it's cringy. Oh, it goes back to like Orange Man bad. Orange Man bad. See, that's another thing. Like people say, oh, you like the establishing, Kevin. It's like, really? Like I talk all the time about how I'm different than the mainstream media. The mainstream media is always Trump bad. Whereas I'm like, I want to give Trump credit here for Iran. I always say, I wish I could give him more credit. Like I don't have it like I'm out to spite Trump. Like if Trump does something, I'm going to change my mind to be the opposite because I don't like Trump. Like no, I wish that Trump would do more stuff that I agree with, and then I can give him credit. Like I'm not resistant to Trump in that sense. Like I wish he would do the right thing more. I don't think he has that much in the way of solid conviction. So I think if there were a lot more Hawks around him, he would listen to them more than like Tucker Carlson and stuff. But that's why, of course, he has done some stuff that I give him credit for, like pull out of the Iran deal and kill Soleimani. And obviously, he's overseeing increases in the military budget. So it's not all bad. But yeah, this whole thing to like, oh yeah, let's side with Merkel to own Trump because Trump's too close to Russia. Well, I got news, dudes. Merkel is arguably closer to Russia than Trump is. Let's just keep it real. Let's just keep it real. I know that's going to trigger a lot of the neolibs out there, and they're going to tell me about how Trump's racist and everything. But it's like, yeah, Merkel, Germany, they are dependent on Russia. Like Germany is becoming a Russian puppet state. It's pathetic. It's pathetic. Absolutely pathetic and unacceptable. So, like, really, we want to go back to the Cold War, like the old Cold War, where the battle lines are drawn in Germany. Really? No, I want bases on their borders. I don't want it halfway. That's too risky. Like, I want us to have 100% of the leverage. So weak. So weak, dude. Chris Redfield says, let's see. Yeah, no, I'm a fan of nuclear power. Yeah, Olympian God says nuclear energy is one of the cleanest sources out there. We're also providing an immense amount of energy per cost. Yeah, agreed. 100%, 100%. And that's why Russia doesn't like it, because then we're not dependent on Russia for energy, right? So there's a reason the Green Party opposes nuclear energy. I mean, you would think the Green parties, they want to get off of fossil fuels. So, of course, they're going to support nuclear energy the most because they really want to fight climate change. But they're funded by the Russians. So, of course, they have to be against nuclear energy because they want us to buy stuff from Russia. This is in Europe mostly, but the American Green Party as well. I mean, Jill Stein had dinner with Putin, literally. You don't believe me? You think that's a meme? Like I've had people say to me before, like that's BS, Kevin. She didn't have dinner with Putin. What kind of conspiracy crap is that? Well, if I do have the picture here still, I'll see if I can find it. Yeah, this is a picture. I'm not making it up. That's Jill Stein right there on Putin's left. That's Michael Flynn right there on Putin's right. They're at a gala for Russia Today propaganda, having dinner right there. Putin, Jill Stein, leader of the Green Party. So she's having, a cozy dinner with the leader of the country that produces the most oil and gas in the world and exports it. She's the leader of the Green Party. Yeah, kind of sus, dude. Kind of sus. So, yeah, fifth columns, 100% fifth columns. Let's see. Oh yeah, Canadian CANDU reactors are pretty good. Yeah, we gave them to like Pakistan and India and stuff. Yeah, those are good, efficient reactors for sure. Yeah, and exported. They're basically the reason why like Pakistan's got nukes and stuff. So let's see. Oh, we got an alt-righter here. Alan Ray says, you know what the neolibs and paleocons have in common? They both kiss up to Russia to be edgy. I'm going to wear a Putin shirt because it triggers the libs or whatever. Well, a lot of the neolibs on Twitter won't really embrace Russia too much. What they'll more often do is just oppose any efforts to get tough. Like they won't claim to be like Putin fanboys or whatever. They just oppose intervention in Syria and stuff like that, in Iran, right? So, and North Korea, and call you a warmonger. So it's like they help Russian interests, but they're not directly like falling in love with Putin the same way that the paleocons are. So there is a bit of nuance there, but. Olympian God says, what do you think about Europeans bypassing the economic sanctions of Iran to trade with them? So I'll close out with answering this question. It proves to us, it shows to us, it reveals to us the truth of what I've been saying for some time, but I haven't really mentioned it on the stream too much. But it's another reason why the neoliberals really don't like me. They really don't like me because I'm an American exceptionalist. And I believe that for the liberal order to be victorious, America has to be the vanguard of that. It has to be. And the neoliberals, they hate that because they see America as like this shitlord country that isn't woke. But they look at the European Union and they see it as, I guess, like, oh, well, the European Union respects trans rights and they have a more better welfare system or whatever. By the way, neoliberals today love the welfare statism. That's another thing. Sure, they'll call themselves capitalists or whatever. They just want to reform welfare and it's cringy, and they want to impose a bunch of new taxes. They're for the carbon taxes, all that kind of crap as well. That helps Russia. But the thing is, they want a European sort of super state to rival America because they see America as like conservative and dirty and a shitlord, basically, right? Not woke. Whereas they see the EU and they see Merkel and Macron and stuff, and they say, that's woke. So they want like the EU to be a superpower. And they say, well, the only reason why the neocons have a point right now about America is because Europe isn't united. But if we could get Europe to be a superpower, then that would be the home of the liberal order in the world. And I look at that and I'm like, the European Union as a single country would cut to Russia so fast it would make your head spin. Like they would go bankrupt so fast it would make your head spin. They would have the most atrocious welfare statism. It'd be like Greece, but the whole continent now, except for the UK. And they would cut to Russia, and they would trade with Iran, and they would trade with North Korea, and they would trade with China because now America has even less influence over them because now they're this big top dog superpower. Superpower. No, the European Union will never be a superpower. They're feeble. They don't have it in them. The Europeans are unreliable. There's no way. There's no way. They would trade with Russia. They would trade with China. They would trade with Iran. And so to answer your question about them bypassing the economic sanctions, that is the evidence. That's one data point in the evidence there, indicating that the Europeans are unreliable allies. The UK is pretty reliable. The rest of Europe, unreliable. Very unreliable. Let's not forget that France sold Saddam yellow cake so that he could make weapons of mass destruction in the 70s and 80s. And it was the Israelis that actually had to go in and bomb his reactor because France enabled him to get nukes. France enabled Saddam to get nukes. By the way, if anybody ever tells you, oh, well, America gave Saddam the weapons, no, it was France and the Soviet Union. France, a lot of French politicians have long time held sympathies for communism and socialism. That's a fact. That's not like a conspiracy theory. They were in NATO, but I mean, they weren't. I mean, Franco in Spain was fascist. He was literally a fascist, and he was a more loyal ally than France was. That's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, Pinochet was a more loyal ally than France was. I mean, it's a joke. It's a joke. So they're wavering. They're feeble. It's not going to work. They're never going to be a superpower. They can never unite anyway. But like, let's say they did, they would go bankrupt so fast. Their spending is out of control. their welfare status. They don't understand how to defend themselves at the end of the day. In that sense, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work at all. And them trading with Iran right now to own Trump, they're siding with Russia and China and Iran because Orange Man bad. They're children, man. They're children. They're trying to woke, scold, and lecture Trump when this is one of the few times that Trump has done the right thing. Oh man, how embarrassing is that? How embarrassing is that, man? Like, I mean, I can't take these countries seriously because the US pays for their defense too, and then they go and crap on America and go and trade with Iran. Here's what I would do if I were the American president. Switzerland would have already been sanctioned already, like because they trade with North Korea and stuff. They're gone. Switzerland is not Western, but the other countries that claim to be Western, the NATO countries, and they go and trade with Iran. I'm like, we're going to sanction you if you continue this. We're going to treat you like Iran if you continue this. Like, it's either us or them. Who do you want to trade with? My belief is they would, at the end of the day, say, well, we don't like you, Trump, if I'm Trump, but you're a bigger trading partner. So, of course, we're going to trade with you. But they'd really have to be like carrot and stick approached into that. They wouldn't just say, oh, we agree. You guys are Americans and we we owe you a bit of thanks for freeing us from the Nazis and all that kind of stuff. They wouldn't say that. No, they would say this is manipulation. He's blackmailing us. Trump is being mean. We just want to trade with Iran, bro. I mean, they'd be the triggered Zoomer. This is what the Europeans would look like if the U.S. president said that. This is what they would look like. Just imagine this Zoomer dude here, but with a European Union emoji or whatever. Like this is them. They'd be like, no, but I just want to trade with Iran. It's like, okay, traitor. Like, whose side are you on? You're either with us or you're with the terrorists. Iran is the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. I'm so done, dude. I can't take Western Europe seriously. I mean, the UK is the exception. I'm talking about the socialist leaning countries in Europe. I can't take them seriously. Can't take them seriously at all. Like, it's I mean, look at how France executed intervention in Libya with Obama. That's what happens when neolibs try to act like hawks too. They screw it up from like day 2. Like, at least with Bush, you could say, well, they didn't stay the course and it wasn't really planned out necessarily too well. But like, they were there for years and years and years. But with Obama and France, it's like, oh, let's go in, let's get out. Let's just be politically expedient. Amazing, man. These people are a joke. They're self-parody. Like, I mean, and then people find it surprising when, like, I would prefer Mitt Romney to Obama, or I would prefer John Bolton to Obama, or I would prefer Dick Cheney to Obama. It's like, hey, you sound like a Republican. You sound like a conservative. It's like, I'll take a conservative Republican over that any day. Any day. Like, because they're going to stay the course. They're actually going to take out the dictator and then stay to try to make it right. So, let's see. Oh, I agree to Chris talking about the UK and a socialist problem. I hate Corbyn. I'm so glad Johnson kicked his ass. That was based. It was based. I really despise Corbyn. Corbyn's honestly like the worst of all worlds because like he's like a socialist tanky in the sense that like he'll defend like the Stalinists and the Castro type people, but he's also like a defender of terrorism and stuff, which at least the old school tankies used to call like religion the opiate of the masses, and they were against it. He supports it because he sees them as like oppressed minorities that, yeah, they're doing terrorism because the Jews are evil and stuff. There's nothing that I have in common with Jeremy Corbyn. Like, I don't think Jeremy Corbyn and I agree on anything. Like, what would we agree on? He's pro-Russian. He's pro-Hamas. He's anti-Israel. He's anti-America. He's anti-interventionist. He's a socialist. He's pretty conservative and hates Jews. Like, what would we agree on? Like, he hates Jews, dude. I mean, he's basically a Holocaust denier. Jeremy Corbyn is like one of those like almost like Nick Fuentes type figures. Like there's nothing we have in common. Like he has more in common with like the KKK and stuff and the Stalinists than he does with anybody in the neocon side of things. Like there's nothing. Like what do we have in common? Like I can't think of anything. Maybe there's something. I mean, he breathes air, I breathe air. I mean, but Corbyn's a joke. Corbyn's a total joke. Not a fan. Um, and I'm glad he got crushed. Because he didn't just lose. He got completely curb stomped in that election. I mean, Corbynism is done and dusted in the UK. And he also appears on press TV. Like he appears on Iranian state TV. Like he's a water boy for the Ayatollah. Corbyn is. I can't believe that guy has any popularity in a Western country. I mean, he's basically. I mean, let's see what Chris has to say. He says Corbyn is another arrogant limey. Talks about how labor is anti-imperialistic, yet he loves to lecture people on what is and isn't racism. He also has lots of connections to Hamas, Hezbollah, and the NRA. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying is like at least with the old school tankies, they were against like religious extremism. He's for religious extremism, and he's a tanky. So like he's even worse than the old school Stalinists that at least would reject Islamic terrorism. Like he's the worst of all worlds, my dudes. I hate Jeremy Corbyn, man. Yeah, and he's a terrorist sympathizer, no doubt, no doubt. I mean, you hate to see it, but you know what you love to see is when he gets blown out of the water in an election, because it turns out that people don't like that. So, gone on for about 3 hours. So I thank you all for being here tonight. I'm going to wrap up this stream now. Thanks for watching. And I will say, I do hope that you will be sure to like this video as well as subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. Additionally, go and follow this channel over on Twitch. It'll help me out big time, trying to get up to 50 followers to get affiliate status. And definitely, if you appreciate my work, being out here sticking it to all the cringe mongers and the yikes lords, and we got a lot of them, and we got a lot of haters and traitors out there. Then go to my Patreon. That's patreon.com/superpowerbroadcasting. And even $1 a month helps me out big time. So big ups to everybody for being here tonight. And I will be here, as always, tomorrow night for another stream. So thank you for watching, everybody. Peace.